I'd like to call this meeting to order of May 23rd, 2017, a regular board meeting of the Princeton Board of Education. Welcome to this public meeting of the Princeton Board of Education. The board is an unelected, unpaid group of 10 citizens who set policy and make decisions on educational, financial, and personnel matters for the Princeton Public Schools on behalf of all residents. We're always pleased when members of the community attend our meetings. The board and the school district operate under applicable New Jersey laws and under regulations of the New Jersey State Board of Education. Each meeting includes 3 opportunities for those attending to comment on items on the published agenda or of other matters of interest to them. The board reserves the right to limit the time allotted to public participation. Law limits discussion of individual personnel and confidential matters. We desire that our meetings provide useful opportunities for communication between the board and the community. So thank you all for attending. This is a public meeting. Notice was given, and now I'd like to have Ms. Kennedy call the roll.
Patrick Sullivan.
Here.
Daphne Kendall.
Here.
Betsy Kalber-Baglio.
Here.
Debbie Bronfeld.
Here.
Justin Doran.
Here.
Bill Hare.
Here.
Fern Spruill.
Here.
Greg Stankiewicz.
Here.
Connie Witter.
Here.
Evelyn Spahn.
Here.
Abby Emerson.
She'll be here soon.
Okay. She's sort of here. Brian Lee.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can we now move to item D, the adoption of the minutes of our April 25th meeting? Can I have a motion for the adoption of the minutes? Debbie, and a second, Connie? Any discussion or questions on the minutes? If not, okay. Okay. And we'll have 3 abstentions, I think, who people who weren't there, Justin, Fern, and Evelyn. So all in favor of adoption of the minutes? Show of hands.
I'm sorry, you first and second then? I'm sorry.
It was Debbie and Connie.
Okay, and then
All in favor, you might have to look around because we have lots of abstentions. Any abstentions? Okay, and any no votes? I don't think so. Okay. And now we have also the May 9th meeting. We've been busy last month. If may I have a motion for the adoption of the May 9th board meeting? Greg, and second, Justin. Any questions or comments? And here, I think we have no one was not at those meetings. So all in favor?
No, we do. I think we have somebody who wasn't there. Me.
Oh, Fern, okay. All in favor?
Greg, I'm sorry, it was Greg and Justin?
Greg and Justin, yes.
Greg and Justin, okay.
All in favor? Okay. And abstention, Fern, and no votes. Okay, so tonight, thank you all for coming. We've got a nice crowd, and we have this is our first public forum, generally limited to 15 minutes, but we have a special guest tonight who is if you'd like to talk about it, since you set it up.
Hi, so tonight we're having a presentation by the Princeton Children's Fund, and they are a new 501c3 organization established to help all Princeton Public School students who are underserved, and the goal is to close the achievement gap. And so I'd like to invite Liliana and Felicia to come up to present.
And then after that, any other members of the public who have anything that they'd like to comment on, we'll open the time a little bit so that everyone has time to comment. Okay.
To introduce Princeton Children's Fund. It's we're brand new. It was created after a couple of years, but in March. So can you see? Yeah.
Yeah.
Felicia has a better accent, so she's going to do it.
I'm Felicia Spitz, for those of you who don't know me. And Liliana and I and a couple other members of the community have been working to get Princeton Children's Fund established. We actually were incorporated in the state of New Jersey in December of last year and received our 501c3 status shortly thereafter. and we began kind of functioning and serving the community very shortly thereafter. So this is our 2016-17 board. We are anticipating kind of swearing everyone into our board next month for the 2017-2018 board. So what is Princeton Children's Fund? We are very similar to some of the elementary school scholarship funds, if you've heard of Cocoa Fund or Anne's Hands or Parker Bear. And we are also 100% volunteer, similar to the Board of Education. We're different in that we're independently incorporated, so we're not linked to any school or PTO, and we work with all students, so pre-K through 12th grade, who qualify for free and reduced price lunch. And also something that's a little different than some of the elementary school funds is that we do both extracurricular and enrichment. So we'll do anything from maybe soccer or dance to SAT tests and AP exams. Our mission, which you can see, Lil will talk a little bit more about.
Well, the idea of creating this fund was for kids who are in disadvantage of finance and compete with our kids, or whatever you want to call it, and to embrace the community. Princeton is great, and we all feel very Princetonian. So the idea of like the hairdressers or the store or even McCaffrey's, that we all are part of one. So we want, I mean, besides money that of course we need, we want just to create a sense of community, that this is, all this we do for our kids.
And it's part of, I think, the Princeton Public Schools is doing a similar push. There's an opportunity gap that exists based on, you know, the family that a child chose to be born into, which, as we all know, there's not a lot of choice for the kids. So what we're trying to do is equal this experience out. They get a fantastic education in the schools, but there are other things that help them go further in education with college or with their careers that we want to make sure they have. This is a list of some of what is covered. There's a more complete list on our website, which is princetonchildrensfund.org. And you'll also see that some of these are asterisked. We collect a lot of gently used, or Lil likes to call them vintage, clothing. It's very similar to boosters that are run at the high school, or maybe the winter boots and coat drives at some of the elementary schools. But we're going to fill in the gaps where maybe one school runs a little short one year, booster doesn't get what they needed. So we're going to assist with that and just ensure everyone gets what they need. So how do we serve our kids? The first thing we have to do is identify who the kids are that need our support. And we are very lucky to have Liliana, who has been working in the Princeton Public Schools for some time now. And she has helped identify and connect us with what we're calling school coordinators. They may be the nurses, the guidance counselors, they could be the librarian or a music teacher, but they have a special interest in helping kids who need a little extra help. So we have identified them, and they send us.
And we have 2 in each building, kind of.
Yeah, at least 2. In some of the larger schools, we have 2 or 3. When they realize that a child needs something, they submit a
form.
request through our website and let us know what it is that's needed. We have an executive committee that reviews all the requests, and hopefully we'll be in a position to say yes all the time, but we do have an approval process. In our first 3 months, we just had, for those of you who don't know, the prom was Friday, and we sent 10 kids to the prom. We've already paid for 2 AP and SAT exams, and we have just over 60 elementary and middle school children enrolled in summer programming for the summer. The summer programming will provide them both the summer literacy at school in the morning. They'll receive breakfast, and then they will go to camp in the afternoon, where they will receive lunch and additional kind of engagement and nature walks and stuff of that sort. So in terms of how we're doing what we're doing, we have the school coordinators kind of let us know. Like, one of the things we know now is we're going to need some very expensive calculators in the fall for the high school kids. So the school coordinators will help us identify that. We also, many of us on our board, are parents in the schools, so we know if we're doing something for our kids, there are other kids that need the same thing done. We are collecting gently used items, anywhere from prom dresses to Halloween costumes. We're doing a summer campaign right now. I'm trying to convince one of our local pharmaceutical partners to give us some sunscreen. So we do a lot of that kind of work. And then we also, at all the places that we shop and we frequent, we go and talk to them and explain what we're doing, and we ask them to support us, because we believe that when we as a community succeed, we can only do that when we all succeed, and that means every member of our community. And I have to say, every store I've walked into and asked, I think you said the same thing, they have said absolutely yes, and what do you need? It's not...
When they say no, we ignore them.
So we find partners that support our programming, and by support, I mean donate their services or provide it at a very, very reduced cost. And in return for that, we promote them on our website. We obviously continue to shop there and frequent their stores, and we talk about it with our donors and our friends, so they're aware of the businesses in town that are supporting all of our children in town.
And the same thing happens with, all the soccer that is around Princeton. That is most of what our kids, soccer and basketball, are most of what they like to do. They have been wonderful with us. I mean, the discounts that we get, everything, it's phenomenal. So thank you.
So how can you help? One of our strangely time-consuming efforts has been trying to let everyone at all the schools know about us as a resource. Betsy actually was very helpful and set up an opportunity for us to present to all the PTOs, so we let the PTOs know. We've been able to get some information there, but as you're in your schools, talk to people, because we want to help, and we need to get in there and set up a process for the school to work with us. We also need help in terms of raising money and awareness. So we have a Facebook page, which you can like. You can share our posts. We try and put up politically neutral yet pertinent articles about why it's important to support kids now and close the opportunity gap. And also something that's really easy for anyone that shops on Amazon. We are listed with Smile Amazon. So if you just select us as your charity, whatever little incremental piece of your purchase could be donated will come to us. We also could use some facility support, maybe a central location that we could store some of the collected items for our programming in between when we start collecting them and when we actually give them out. And that's all we have to say. Any questions or comments?
Thank you. Did we find who are the school coordinators or not?
I have a question. Thank you so much. It's fantastic to hear about this. What a great initiative and effort. And I guess one thing that I'm curious about is, I know that you presented to the PTOs. You mentioned that. How do you work in conjunction with the schools? I know that my children have gone to JP, and there's the COCO Fund. So how, and I'm sure that other schools, elementary schools, have the same thing. How do you all either share resources, share ideas, work together so that we're not all funding the same things?
Yeah.
Right.
So we kind of coordinate with them, and we do not overlap. So COCO does X, so we will do what COCO can do. I mean, COCO has a percentage for kids. So if they want to, I mean, if we have phenomenal kids who play violin or ballet or soccer, and they have to go to an elite program, so then COCO does X, and then we would supply the other amount.
And the other thing that's, I think, a little difficult, and one of the reasons why we decided to incorporate ourselves and get the 501 status is because the school-oriented programs are very reliant on the volunteers at the time. And what we've seen is a pattern of, you have some really active volunteers, and then they leave, and the transition isn't always smooth. So there may be a year or two before they kind of get it, back up and running again. And what we want to do is we want to be there to make sure that regardless of the volunteer pool at an individual school, the kids are being taken care of. So we've kind of told anybody that has a functioning, kind of scholarship fund, that's great. Let us know what you can't cover. There have also been instances where a lot of kids have come in very quickly. We had that with Coco. We were actually we were able to deal with it. We had 24 kids come in during the school year. So we budgeted based on enrollment in the fall and wound up with a very different, significantly different number by the end of the year. So we will help out in cases like that as well.
Also, Coco is under the umbrella of the PTO, and I'm also part of Coco, so then we know how to.
Hi, I just would love to say thank you for your work, my colleagues on the board who are involved as well. I appreciate the work. It's really, really critical, important work, providing equity across schools for all students, pre-K through graduation. So thank you. I'm wondering about collecting resources. I know sometimes we've had a box here for different things. I mean, it would need to be a big box, but I'm also thinking of every school in the lobby. I'm sure the schools would be, I don't want to speak for them, but more than happy if you send out notices through the schools when you're going through swim bags and swim trunks and goggles and all that, bring them right to school. That would be a convenient drop-off spot.
Right.
So if we can help, I'm happy to help try to facilitate that if we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will be in touch.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say thank you. I don't know if you mentioned, but we have approximately 500 to 600 children in our district that could benefit from this fund. And so part of the reason that I'm involved is because we talk a lot about closing the achievement gap, about equity, and this is one of the first things I've seen that is throwing money behind it, and that's really what these kids need. And I just wanted to point out, it's been an eye-opening experience getting to know Lil and some of the kids that she works with. And when you think about prom, it's not just the prom ticket. It's hair, it's makeup, it's nails, it's tuxedos, it's dresses, it's shoes, it's vests. And
It's a production.
It is.
sorry, production. And so, I'm not there yet. My kids aren't in high school, but these are things that never occurred to me. And when we're talking about equity, this is something that really matters to the kids so that when they go to these events with their peers, they're equal. So thank you very much for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Terrific presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Felicia, Liliana, if I can just build a little bit on what Daphne just said, and thank you for your efforts. Princeton is a place of extraordinary opportunities, academic, social, athletic, and in the true spirit of equity, we want to make sure that every one of our kids has access to those. The schools are committed to that, but it's the partnerships like this that is really going to make it possible. So we're very appreciative of your work, your vision, and the opportunity to collaborate with you. So thank you.
Thank you, boss.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any other comments from the public in this first public comment period, which is open? And just ask that you, when you come to the microphone, if you just identify yourself and where you live, that would be helpful.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Suzanne Lair. I'm a parent of 2 children at Littlebrook School. I'm also a piano teacher and here tonight as a representative from Westminster Conservatory, where I'm on the piano faculty and a camp director for a successful summer piano camp. It has become clear in many recent conversations that some people in town do not realize that there are 2 institutions connected with Westminster, the college and the community music school. These are separate institutions having differing relationships with the Princeton community. While I am saddened by the possibility that Westminster Choir College may no longer exist in Princeton, I want it to be clear that regardless of what happens to the college, the community music school at Westminster Conservatory should remain here. Westminster Conservatory is the community music school in Princeton where about 2,000 students of all ages from Princeton, as well as from surrounding towns, come for private lessons, chamber music, music theory, choir, early childhood music education, musical theater, jazz, a community orchestra, as well as for a variety of summer music camps and the honors music program, an enriching Saturday program throughout the year for serious music students. Westminster Conservatory has served as a musical home for their students and for their faculty. Like the Princeton schools, our music school is in the business of education. We are connected to the Princeton schools by our mission to educate, inspire, and serve the community. Our faculty and our programs have been a part of what makes the music programs in Princeton and all the other local schools so fantastic. Westminster Choir College is a college not only with a world-renowned choir program. The choir sings regularly with the New York Philharmonic and the Philadelphia Orchestra, but also where great choral directors, opera singers, pianists, organists, school music educators, composers, and sacred music experts have studied and afterwards teach and perform in our communities around the country and the world. Graduates from Westminster Choir College are currently teaching at Littlebrook and Riverside Elementary Schools, the high school, as well as other local public and private institutions in the area. I graduated with my master's in piano performance from Westminster Choir College, and my mother has been a professor in the piano department for 45 years. I am hoping that this gem of a music school will stay in Princeton. However, the future of the college is unclear, and therefore, the community music school made up of local students needs a contingency plan. If the college has to move, Westminster Conservatory, the community music school currently residing on the campus of Westminster Choir College, may be in need of a new partnership and a new home. Should the Princeton schools purchase the property, an athletic fields and new classrooms could be built on the part of the campus where there are currently dorms. I understand that there is a serious need for these facilities. The historic part of the campus, with its beautiful performance spaces, administrative offices, and small studios, could be shared. These buildings could house the Princeton Public Schools administrative offices, as well as the Princeton's Community Music School, and perhaps some of the other arts organizations in town that do not have their own home or rehearsal and performance spaces. The campus could have mixed use for the schools and for a community music and arts center. I attended the Princeton Future meeting this past Saturday, and other ideas for the land included the development of senior housing and a cafe within walking distance. Perhaps these uses are not incompatible with the uses I have described. There is a need for our music school to continue to exist in Princeton. It is an important community resource. As the board and the town look for ways to expand our public schools, I hope that we'll have the opportunity to collaborate in continuing to bring quality music education and performance to the Princeton community, thus helping to preserve Princeton's preeminent reputation as a regional cultural center. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public in our open? It looks like Dr. Corral might be making his way. No? But Dr. Ross had enough, yeah. So there will be two other comment periods, one at the end and one in the middle one for agenda items only, so anyone else, there'll be plenty of opportunities to speak. So with that, we'll move to item F, the board president's report. I'll keep it very brief, but I would like to just say that it's been almost a school year, coming to a close now, and if you just look back at what I see changing, there's a lot of exciting things happening. Thanks to the leadership of the PREA, the teachers, and the administration of this school and the board. But what I'm seeing, and I think we're all seeing and talking about, is real changes that are starting. One is changes to our programs and our curriculums. There's been material curriculum reviews and improvements in the curriculum over the past 6 to 12 months and even prior to that, but these things are moving forward and they're exciting. There's been a real focus, as I said last month, that I noticed when we were going through personnel recommendations, a real focus on differentiation that didn't used to exist before that I heard of. And so I'm really excited to hear everybody in the whole school system talking about differentiation as a goal. So that's fantastic. I think Brian and Abby would agree that there's been a focus, at least, on student health and wellness, sort of at least some movement and some change in inertia in terms of these issues and homework and schedule and how this all affects our students. So that's really encouraging to hear that happening. There's been a focus on finance. We just got through a budget, an annual budget, which I think thanks to Ms. Kennedy and others, Justin Duran and the Finance Committee. We've done a fantastic job. We've been a little bit lucky, but we've also had a very skilled set of people managing that process, and our finances are sound for now. We always worry about that, but things are headed in the right direction. We've had a focus on facilities, which we'll hear more about, but really looking at expanding and growing as our community grows. And finally, I think there's been a focus on these issues of equity, of a culture of respect in our building. I think that's just beginning. There needs to be more done. I know Steve Cochran has talked a lot about racial literacy. I think you'll see in the next 6 to 12 months some real concrete actions, just like we saw in student wellness. We hope to see those in terms of getting the facts on racial and other inequalities within our system and how we go about changing those. And Steve will have an announcement too about, I think, the culture of respect that's developing between the board, the administration, and the teachers, especially the PREA. So it's all very exciting to hear all that. The only thing is now is time for action. Before Brian and Abby leave, we want to be able to show them that something can get done. And next month, we're hoping and waiting for what I hope to be big changes at the high school. If they're not big changes, I think there's going to be a lot of disappointed people in this room. So we're looking forward to seeing what starts happening. But anyway, it's been a great run so far. We're excited about what it could turn out to be. But really, now is the time that we've really got to segue from talk to action. I hope that happens. So that's all I had to talk about tonight. I'll turn it over to Steve Cochran. I'm sure you have more, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Good evening, everyone.
Steve, I just want to circle back. Can I just have your name? And I just wanted to thank you for speaking. You're so well-spoken, and I appreciate it so much. But I missed your name.
Suzanne.
And I'm sure I could track you down because I'm sure there aren't too many people who work there who have a mother that's worked there for 45 years. And I'm sure in our small town we could find that. So thank you. And Steve, my apologies.
Not at all.
So one other thing, Steve, while we're interrupting you, I'll just keep going.
This is what we do to him. Sorry.
I meant to mention that on June 8th at 8:30 a.m. in this building, we're having our first event called Bagels with the Board, and it's a chance for members of the community to just come and speak with the board members on a more informal basis. Again, that's 8:30 a.m. to 10 o'clock here, and we'll have subsequent events in September and December. So it's just a way to increase the communication with the community. We're looking forward to that. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Steve.
Very good. Okay. June 8th, Bagels with the Board. Another item in our strategic plan that you can check off.
Thank you, Betsy.
It's all about the action. So spring is always an extraordinarily busy and exciting time in our schools. Students are celebrating their learning and creativity with concerts and art shows and authors' nights and science days. And it's the time of year for athletic playoff games and talent shows and awards assemblies. And always at the center of those celebrations is a deep and caring collaboration, which I guess would be my theme for tonight. It's a collaboration among students, teachers, parents, administrators, coaches, and community partners. So as we near the culmination of this school year, I really just want to affirm the character and accomplishments of our students and all of the adults who support them. And in that same spirit of collaboration on behalf of students, I have another important, albeit preliminary, announcement to make tonight. Last Tuesday, May 16th, the leadership of the board and the leadership of our Teachers Association gathered in this very room, and in the space of about 1 hour, tentatively agreed to extend the current terms of the teacher's contract for an additional 2 years. This would be a notion time for applause. So this is great news. So instead of expiring at the end of this next year, the contract will extend through 2020. And instead of spending next year embroiled in negotiations, the board, the teachers, our school, and our community will be focused on fulfilling the goals of our strategic plan and on preparing our kids to really lead lives of joy and purpose. So it's been a personal pleasure working with the PREA, and I want to thank the co-presidents and the full leadership of the Teachers Association for their strong and consistent commitment throughout this year to working collaboratively to solve problems, to enhance wellness, to deepen learning for both students and staff. I am really appreciative for what we've been able to accomplish together. I'm grateful for the focus on collaborating in the best interest of students, and I'm excited about what we can achieve in the years ahead. The next step in the contract discussions is to agree on a salary guide and how the contractual increase will be distributed among the members with varying degrees of experience. So those are just ironing out the details. The board and the PREA will be meeting again, I believe, next week. And our sincere hope, mutual hope, is that we'll be able to announce a full agreement to extend the contract before the end of the year, which would be a great way to end this year and begin the summer. And then just continuing with the theme of collaboration, we want to take a few minutes tonight to highlight the new teacher mentoring program that we've developed here in Princeton. Last month, the board reappointed some outstanding teachers, or I guess it was May 9th, at our last meeting. But great teaching doesn't just happen. We have to create the conditions and the resources for growing great teachers. And our mentoring program has been carefully curated throughout the years by our esteemed Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mr. Lou Goldstein. Lou recognized a long time ago that teachers are their own best resource. And he has worked with some of our more experienced staff to create a program designed to grow really great teachers. And some of those teachers are here tonight. I thank them for being with us, and I will let Lou introduce them and the mentoring program in which they're involved. Mr. Goldstein.
Thank you. So tonight we're very pleased to have a presentation from teachers about mentoring, which is for teachers. And it's good to note that over the years, and going back to 2001 when we first started the one-year mentoring program, which grew to 3 years, then to 5 years, and then to 7 years, and was recognized by the New Teacher Center in Santa Cruz as one of the premier mentoring programs in the nation. And the vision for this program came and is the byproduct of numerous hours of work by teachers, administrators, human resources staff, curriculum staff, and had the support of the Board of Education over the years. And as a result of this, the long-term vision of the program was and is to retain quality teachers and to improve the quality of classroom instruction to enhance student learning and achievement for all students. So we're very fortunate to be able tonight to have teachers present and professional staff present to talk about the various opportunities that are provided through the mentoring program, opportunities such as master teacher observations, where teachers can go observe other teachers and learn from them, technology offerings, design your own day workshops, seminars for success, which all first-year teachers take with the superintendent, and also the SEED program. So in order to get started, I'd like to introduce two of our mentor coordinators. First, Kathy Lewis from the high school, and then Paul Skauka from the middle school, to take you through an introduction of the program tonight.
Okay, hello. At the high school, at any given time, we probably have about 50 or 60 teachers involved in the program since it is 7 years long. So tonight we have somebody speaking to you about the Do Your Own, which is a professional development program where the teachers create their own day, whether they stay in the building and work with other teachers or visit a museum. We also have master teacher observations, which I think is one of the really good parts of the program, in that teachers can sit with other teachers, visit their classes, and then discuss those lessons with them. Sometimes it's in their own department, and sometimes it's in perhaps an area that they never get to experience. We also have somebody talking about the program for very first-year teachers, where they've met with Superintendent Cochran several times a year. And we have somebody talking about the technology program. So we have Patty Manhart for Do Your Own Professional Development, Angel Fuentes Pesquera for Master Teacher Observations, Claire Krulowitz for Technology, and Kian Barry for Seed and Seminars for Success.
So I just want to start by saying thank you. I'm not talking about volleyball tonight, but I do want to extend my gratitude for the board's commitment to equitable funding for our female student athletes. So quick aside, but my focus is on design your own professional development. I've found it's been an amazing opportunity for, after my first year of interacting with my United States history curriculum, to then cater my needs inside of my content area, but then also being able to pair that with my own interest. So in a way, I've always kind of felt like the DYOPD is like I'm getting paid to do this, like I'm getting supported to do these things that I love, and then recognizing how that also benefits my students in the classroom. So for one summer, I used time spent at different cultural institutions inside of New York City and Philadelphia, and visited different exhibits and galleries that very specifically could be brought back into my US 1 and US 2 history classrooms. There was a degenerate art exhibit at the Neue Gallery that focused on Nazi propaganda during World War II, the art of Norman Rockwell at the Newark Museum, Witness Art and Civil Rights in the 60s at the Brooklyn Art Museum, which is also where I was introduced to Judy Chicago's feminist piece, The Dinner Table, which is amazing. And then they also had an exhibit on Ai Weiwei, and his work is featured prominently in the Princeton community. So I can very concretely connect to then lessons in my classroom that I'm pulling from these exhibits. Photography in the American Civil War at the Met. There was a 1968 exhibit at the National Constitution Center, which was a great reminder for me to remind my students of all these sort of intersecting units that kind of were encapsulated in the year of 1968. So that helped enrich my curriculum. And then Jacob Lawrence's migration series at the MoMA was a really great opportunity to explore the Harlem Renaissance. In a different year, I attended a Rutgers Institute for High School Teachers on Memoir and Memory, and it was a really great introduction to a diverse array of voices that can then be brought back into the classroom. So I had different digital and text-based resources that related to the lives of Mary Crow Dog, a Lakota woman who was also an AIM activist, Monica Sohn, who discussed her sort of struggles and a dual identity of having a grandfather who's interned during World War II as a Japanese American, so that was really interesting. And then one of my best sort of takeaways from that seminar was they shared with us interviews with veterans who were responsible for the My Lai massacre during Vietnam. And they showed immediate responses of sort of this disengaged, lack of culpability or guilt for actions. And then they also showed interviews with the same veterans 20 years later where you could see the effects of PTSD. And so that was a resource that I was not aware of until I had attended that seminar. And you really feel it connecting with students and humanizing your curriculum. And then finally, one of my favorite opportunities was going to Cal State Long Beach for a week-long National Endowment for the Humanities seminar on Southern California during the Cold War. And it very directly connects to my Cold War curriculum. It gave me a new sort of format in thinking about especially the space race and who's included and who's excluded from those different federal programs. And so, on the ground, you get a much more in-depth picture. And I also, speaking of pictures, I got a picture with Eleanor Otto, who is a real-life Rosie the Riveter. So that's definitely one of my PowerPoints, and I love when I get to that point in my curriculum. And then this upcoming seminar, my DYOPD is attending a Gilder Lerman seminar at UC Boulder, and it's about westward expansion. So I'm really looking forward to bringing those lessons on Manifest Destiny back into my US 1 classroom, because I know I can do a much better job looking at diverse narratives, especially in treatment of Native Americans, and I know that that's something that the professor running this program focuses on. So I look forward to taking those experiences back into the classroom. Thank you.
I think all of us would like to be in your classroom. We may surprise you. You have a few extra students.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Angel Fuentes Pesquera at the high school also. first, before I want to thank the Princeton Children's Fund that they are doing a great job. For that, I was there last Friday at prom, and I could see how the kids are receiving free or reduced lunch. We're enjoying their tuxedos, their dresses, the tickets to go to prom, so thank you very much. I do appreciate it. I recommend students to go to their counselors also to find resources that are available to them through the PTOs and now through PCF. Thank you. You're welcome. My undergrad was in biology, so all my experience have been in bio my whole life. When I came to New Jersey, I started doing graduate research and graduate studies, also in biology, since that was my expertise. And I continued to work in the pharmaceutical industry for 10 years, developing skills for and research for drugs in the pharmaceutical industry. Very interesting work. After those 10 years, I started studying pedagogy, theory, application, skills, grouping through students, student groupings, different ways to engage students. And then I became a teacher. Thank you to Princeton Public Schools. I was hired. Thank you to you all, Mr. Goldstein, for that awesome interview. And then through my first year, I did all the pedagogy courses to learn that art of teaching and the skills to do that. The MTO, the Master Teacher Observations part of the program was great and excellent to show me what a master teacher is and how a good teacher grow and develop through the years. Those teachers told me that it's a continuous work of teaching and learning and teaching. So that was great. I did have the background on science, so that wasn't my issue. It was the pedagogy aspect of teaching. So that gave me that opportunity to learn the art of teaching. I didn't have to observe any science teachers, biology teachers, since that was my background. So I decided to go out of the bio. I observed a chemistry teacher, very great. It showed me some nice projects and skills, and I'm grateful that I chose chemistry because next year I will be teaching a chemistry class. Then special ed, I did study special ed courses and became certified as a special education teacher. And through the Master Teacher Observation Program, I did observe few special education teachers, master teachers in small group instruction, in co-teaching instruction, since co-teaching is so important, as we have mentioned, and differentiation between special education students, their interactions with gen ed students, and the development of gen ed students with both population. So that was great. I had the opportunity to observe those special education teachers. And I did go further and observe English teachers, because since science is my knowledge, I wanted to teach the students reading and writing skills. So the best was to observe an English teacher. So there I got some skills that I did learn through the courses that I took, but they were able to share with me dynamics between students, higher readers, lower readers, groupings. So that was a good experience that I'm using now for science literacy. I observed co-teachers through the program. Since I was going to be a special education teacher, I needed those as skills, and I did observe few co-teachers and got some first-hand information through them. Since I'm a bilingual teacher, I went also through bilingual classrooms, especially Spanish, to observe the dynamics. There I learned and met Hispanic teachers, also foreign languages teachers, and since then I became involved in supporting our bilingual students or English language learners. So I've been working with them at the side. And some of them are in my classes, so I use my expertise there also. And thank you for all this program. I was able to obtain tenure. This is my 5th year, so I thank you all for your confidence. And I keep learning. I keep engaging. When I do sub for teachers that will be out for a day, I just observe. It's not part of the program after 2nd year, but I still observe and learn from master teachers. You're welcome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Claire Krulitz, and I'm finishing up my 3rd year teaching special education and math at Princeton High School. So when technology integration in the classroom is seamless and thoughtful, students not only become more engaged, they begin to take control over their own learning too. So effective tech integration changes classroom dynamics, encouraging student-centered, project-based learning. So how does a non-tech savvy teacher create engaging, technology-integrated projects and problems for students to engage in with others? Well, it's the technology workshops that are provided by our mentoring program. So as part of the mentoring program, all new teachers in years 1 through 4 are required to complete 5 hours of technology training of their choosing every year. The workshops are offered in the summer and also during the school year. And the tech department does a great job at catering to our needs and wants. They actually just put out a survey asking us what we wanted for training this summer. So they then gather the information, and then they coordinate our desires, and then they provide training for us. So with so much technology in our district, with just at the high school, Promethean boards and iPads, we have Chromebooks, we have laptops, and so much more, having these workshops is extremely helpful. So in my 1st year in the district, I did a workshop on flipping the classroom. So we learned how to record videos on iPads and also different apps that would allow students to record the videos and then be able to post them online for students to use as resources. In my 2nd year here, we did some workshops on iPads and apps again, some different ones. I really like the ones for math, of course, but also our websites through First Class, our old system, and also how to create a Google Classroom. And then this past year, all of our workshops focused on our new learning management system, Haiku Learning. So we were able to learn how the program worked and then customize it for our students. And that's one of been my favorite things about Haiku, is being able to look at the program, be able to embed not only files and notes from class, but also videos and different art pieces and links, and you're able to then connect everything, and it's in one spot, one click away. And so because of our tech department, thanks guys, you guys have been so helpful. So all the workshops are so user-friendly and engaging, and most importantly, extremely relevant to our daily instruction. Thank you.
Hi, Kian Barry. I'm a 1st-year teacher finishing up at Princeton High School. I teach social studies. So the unique aspects of the 1st-year teacher program are the SEED program and the Seminars for Success. SEED stands for Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity. Basically, we have discussions about the topic that was broached earlier, racial literacy, our perceptions versus the reality of situations in our school system and among ourselves. Both of these opportunities, and I'll speak to Seminars for Success in a second, provide us, honestly, one of the very few opportunities I get to meet with many of these people in the entire year. Some of them are in different schools. Some of them are in the same school. But frankly, breaking the insular nature of the 1st-year teacher working till 6 o'clock in their office every day it's a necessity that needs to happen. So the meetings that we have, SEED, we met 3 times this year. We met in August. We met one time during the fall and one time during the spring. We addressed a number of topics. We used our own names to judge, to consider how they've been mispronounced and what that might mean if we're thinking about how we might be pronouncing someone else's name. Having a first name that is often mispronounced, I could appreciate that. In our Seminars for Success, Mr. Cochran led us in different topics. So he didn't give us directives. He gave us some direction on topics like differentiation or a number of other topics. But we met 5 times for 1 hour. In that time, it was some of the time that we got to use, again, with other teachers, which I want to emphasize when I was asked to talk about this is by far, for me, one of the most important parts of the program. I've heard people talk about this on a committee I'm on in school and other ways that, and Steve mentioned it earlier, that teachers are our own best option sometimes. We had our unconference, that was another example of that. When I get to sit down and talk to people, what do you do well? What struggles do you have? Not only can it improve your teaching, it can let you feel not as bad when you are struggling in a certain way. So hearing from other people, among other parts of the program, we do also do master teacher observations and are involved in other ways. We talk to our mentor, who's Ms. Manhart, who spoke just earlier for me. But I think the act of bringing us together is the most important thing. It's going to be interesting next year when we don't do that, trying to make sure I'm not dogmatic about the way I go throughout my day and that I do get to meet other people in different disciplines. And it really has been an especially useful opportunity this year. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Paul Skalka, I'm the JW Mentor Coordinator. I'm going to bring up four very people that I teach with to speak to you tonight about their experiences with the same the topics that the high school people just talked about. I would just simply like to say before they came up several things. One is I really working with the mentor program for me is very important for me, just as a payback to the field which I've spent dedicated my life to teaching in, but also two is the fact that I get to know everybody in the building. One of the things as a teacher, you oftentimes get secluded in an area and you get involved in your field. You don't interact with people in different grade levels because your schedules don't work out correctly. But as the mentor coordinator, I see everybody in the building, new teachers that come in. So I get to know everybody. So I feel I stay more connected to the teaching staff in the building that's there. And to me, that's extremely, extremely important. So with that said, I'd like to introduce four people that are going to come up and speak to you for the middle school. Emily Spera will come up and talk about SEED. Lisa Schofield will be coming up and talking about master teacher observations. Holly Hobbie will be talking about DYOs, and Lonnie Robson will be talking about tech workshops. Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll go in the order. Hello, my name is Emily Spera, and unfortunately, the second act, you kind of just have to say ditto. He took everything that I'm saying. But the SEED and Seminars for Success were very helpful for me. Even though I just graduated a year ago, it still reminded me how much I love being a student, and I actually looked forward coming for an hour and learning about things that Penn State did touch on, but learning more and interacting with my colleagues from other schools, but also in my schools. I'm the accelerated teacher, and I teach in every grade, so I'm in every house. So it allowed me to talk to all the houses because I only coordinate with one of the houses on a daily basis. So it really allowed me to talk to my colleagues and really emphasize, okay, what can I do something fun? Because I know math can be a little bit sometimes, but it allowed me to come up with really, really cool projects that I can introduce to the kids, have them teach each other, have them try and teach me something new that I haven't learned yet, or teach it, I don't know, faster, even better way. And I just want to say thank you because 2 days after you taught us the multiple intelligence, a colleague of mine had to leave for an emergency, and she just happened to be teaching that lesson. So I quickly took out those papers and made copies, and I saved the day. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Schofield. I am a first-year teacher at JW. Special education teacher. I do in-class resource for both 7th and 8th grade. And I've only had 1 year in the mentor program, so I don't have that many observations to talk about. But I've had 4 this year that I do want to talk about. And I feel like we've been given a gift with the mentoring program and the opportunity to go and observe other teachers. And I think a lot of this has been touched on already tonight, where we do become isolated in that, you know, we are always kind of focused on what it is that we're doing. So then to go out and to be able to see master teachers doing this has been a real privilege. What I did is focused on the other areas or the other special education classes that we have at JW. And I was able to go into 2 support labs and a resource class, and then also an ELL class. And I do have to read this part because I'm not going to remember this, and I'm starting to feel a little nervous as I realize that I'm speaking out loud. I was thrilled to observe great effective instructional practice in all 4 of these classes this year. There was lots of scaffolding that was going on. And again, imagine that I'm working with students that are learning in a different way. So again, there's the scaffolding, the schema building that was going on in every class, the use of technology. We've talked about that tonight as well. Lots of good discourse, and that was something that we had talked about at some of our meetings this year as well. All of those levels of questions that are asked. High levels of student engagement, and that I cannot stress enough. I mean, these were students that were just so happy to be there. And with that was purpose and rapport. The teachers' rapport with the students and the students' rapport with the teachers all resulted in what I wrote about as being joy. There was just lots of joy in these classrooms. So I do feel that we are blessed in this field. And one of the reasons that I did become a teacher was this idea of giving back, and to have teachers that allow you to come in and to have a program where we recognize that this is important is it's just a wonderful thing, and one of the reasons that I do what I do. So not only was there a better understanding of how all of our other special education classes work, but it's also just really great to see how we support our students at Princeton. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Holly Hopke. I'm a 6th grade special education teacher at John Witherspoon. This is my 2nd year here at the Princeton Public Schools. And as some of you may know, and especially the special education teachers, in typical special education fashion, of course I have to have what I'm talking about presented in a visual format. However, I didn't realize that everyone would be facing this way, so it's a little bit awkward, so I apologize. So I'll be talking today about the DYO Do Your Own Workshop Professional Development. This is my first year doing it because it's your 2nd year, it's required. So I'll be talking about how I went to this and how it's impacted my teaching. So I attended, I went on, I'm not sure if anyone is aware of this, PPS, which is a organization that works to, their sole purpose is just for professional development and growth of educators. And so I went on the website and I was looking and I found this wonderful professional development relatively close by, more in regards to what I do or what I see more as a special education teacher, which is oppositional, defiant, and disruptive children and adolescents. And this was a more non-medication approach to how to handle these behaviors in the classroom and what to do. And so there were lots of purposes and goals in this, but I tried to highlight the key ones. The biological makeup of the brain, so the different parts, the etiology of these different disorders and figuring out why this happens and how it happens, getting to the fundamental reasons. And then strategies as to how to deal with tantrums, noncompliance, and other challenging behaviors. And then also ways and techniques to assess students and give them the proper treatment in a way, and I'll get back to that word treatment. And also, of course, positive alternatives. And so what I really took away from this after 6.5 hours was what I really focused on and what I really enjoyed was the different parts of the brain, the actual organic makeup, going over the different parts and how specific parts over or underdevelopment causes these specific disorders or disabilities that will cause manifestations of behavior. Two parts that I found really interesting was the frontal lobe, which is our executive functioning and kind of orchestrates the rest of the brain, and the amygdala, which is a very, very tiny part of the brain in the very back near the cerebellum that controls the fear response. So over or underdevelopment causes students to exhibit behaviors based upon that. Going into gray matter and white matter, that's a lot and it's really interesting, but I'm not going to get into it. And then also treating the symptoms, which was really interesting because our presenter went into explaining how often, especially with students with disabilities, are labeled with a blanketed statement of, you have ADHD, you have autism. But that's not always the case. You need to look at the child individually and evaluate them that way. One of my favorite saying is, If you know one child with autism, you know one child with autism. What works for one works for one. And so that's something that I really found really stuck with me, and making sure that you're assessing the child individually and then treating those symptoms. What are those behaviors? What are they acting out? What are they doing? And then from there, you can slowly work to have that child be the best that they can be and maximize their success. Tantrums and meltdowns. Tantrums are usually, children do that. That's usually something for, they have a goal in mind. Meltdowns are usually things that are beyond children and usually organic. Those are things where usually they don't even recognize what's going on. This could be where, students have to leave the room because a child's having this meltdown. And then just, again, strategies and methods to control these behaviors, whether they are organic or just attention-seeking. And then putting the knowledge into practice. This has just made me more aware and has helped me really to hone in on monitoring students individually, evaluating them, and then treating those symptoms as appropriate to each child. And then positive alternatives, which is something that I think all educators or anybody who's involved or interacting with children sort of do. One thing is feeling cards. I really like those. That was one thing that I learned that I tried, and it has worked really well, especially with some of my students with autism. Usually, I don't want to go into a power struggle or anything where they're having some sort of going into a meltdown. So instead, having them have these cards and just place it on the desk so I can see what's going on, and then that way I can find some time to talk independently with them. And then assigning roles helps, giving students having them feel as though they have some sort of authority or feeling of a role within the room. And then short-term and long-term goals, which are really beneficial and help them to see, to get something immediately, but also see the reward in something long-term. Okay, and that was my DYO.
I don't have a presentation like that. Hello and good evening. My name is Lonnie Roptison. I am the STEM coding and digital art teacher at John Witherspoon Middle School. This is my second year teaching within Princeton Public School System. However, this is my 15th year as an educator. My presentation part tonight will be devoted to the technology professional workshops offered through the new teacher mentoring program. In January, I attended 2 tech PDs. The session topics were digital citizenship in the middle school and differentiated instruction, meeting all the needs of all learners. Both sessions were packed full of important and meaningful information I could easily translate to the classroom to enhance my curriculum, thus bettering the educational experience of all my students. Plus, as a major benefit to all the participants of the tech workshop, we were given 24/7 access, online access, to all the information and resources from each PD through websites created through our new Haiku Learning LSM platform. Given my class's subject is often dealing with the digital and online realm, certain elements of the digital citizenship workshop I found particularly valuable on a personal and professional level. In my class, we are mostly dealing with creating original pieces of digital art using programming languages like HTML to create websites from scratch and use JavaScript to create animations. The first portion of my class is always devoted to what I like to call the Tech News Journal. Its context always guides a whole class discussion on current technological issues within my students' world. For example, when I shared some facts I learned from the Digital Citizenship for Middle Schoolers workshop with my students, some of their reactions were very interesting. On that day, we were talking about hacking, and I told them some of the most common passwords used in 2016 were 123456 and the word password. Some just laughed it off, and some got this scared, puzzled look on their face, like I need to change my password right now. Also, what I gained from the differentiated instruction, meeting all the needs of all learners, Tech PD just added more tools to my metaphorical text toolbox of various teaching strategies I already use in my classroom. Thanks to this workshop, I now use pre-assessment a lot more to determine what my students already know, therefore streamlining my lessons to focus on what they still need to master. Even with 15 years of teaching experience, I'm always happy to open the door to new learning experiences, especially ones that strengthen me personally and as a professional. And I look forward to attending more tech workshops in the future. Thank you. Good night.
We also have elementary staff here tonight who are going to come up. I think Meredith is here, and Gita, if you want to come up.
Hi, good evening. I'm Meredith Cook. I'm the school psychologist at Littlebrook. I will start by thanking you all for approving me for tenure just a couple weeks ago. And the very next morning, Lou asked if I would come this evening, so here I am. But I am here to speak about my design your own experiences. And as I listen to my colleagues speak before me, I think the thing that comes through is just how passionate everybody feels. And that's one of the major benefits of the DYO as our mentor program, is that we're encouraged to pursue our passions as it relates to our educational practice, and then also whatever it is that we feel we need. So in my 3 DYO experiences, the first one was a full day on pediatric anxiety disorders, which are becoming more and more prevalent. I believe it's up to about 20% of school-age children. My big takeaway from that was he, after 6 hours, summed everything up with, if you're treating anything related to anxiety, you have to do the thing you're afraid of, and the more you do it, the easier it gets. So that was my takeaway from the first one. The second one, I think you've heard me go on ad nauseum about, which was executive functioning. You've seen the PowerPoint for that. I didn't bring it tonight. But then most recently this year, I attended, it was a 2-day workshop, the first on the zones of regulation, which is a tool used in classrooms for both general and education students to help them improve their self-regulation skills, emotional regulation, and just their awareness of whatever their behavioral traits might be, as well as the second day was focusing on social skills for students with high-functioning autism. And what I've learned over the course of 4 years is that our learners are becoming more and more diverse in their needs, and that means that we need to be able to do more things differently for them. And so with each of those, I was encouraged to not only share them with my fellow CST members, but my building staff, and in some areas with the district as well. And I just appreciate the opportunity to do that. I've also spoken to some of my other colleagues about the experiences they've had, and what I love about the DYO is that if it makes sense for you and it makes sense for you to expand your repertoire of skills, it's supported by the district. So we appreciate that.
Good evening. I'm Geeta Varadarajan, and I teach 2nd grade at Riverside. This is my 3rd year at Princeton Public Schools. And I think the the mentoring program has really helped me grow as a teacher and as a learner. And I think the program is a celebration of learning. So it has provided me a platform to have a professional discussion about pedagogy, not just about pedagogy, but also about school culture, district culture, the unique talents of our students, social status, culture, and how it all plays out into the classroom, and to have discussions around how to make the classroom a place where every student is valued and can thrive and grow. It has also allowed me to forge collaborations and partnerships with experts within our district. And one such opportunity presented itself this time at the technology workshop, which was part of the mentoring program. And you know, I've always wanted to embrace technology, but as a 2nd grade teacher, I found it really hard to give the onus to children to operate that technology independently. And so I went into this workshop with hoping to get some ideas on how to get over that barrier. And I was pleasantly surprised. Krista Gallian presented a workshop on the blended learning environment. And I'm just going to read out a little bit here about what that means. So it's according to the Clayton Christensen Institute for Disruptive Innovation, blended learning is a formal education program in which a student learns in part through online learning with some element of student control over time, place, path, and or pace. And so there's some technology part which the student takes on, which is online, and the other part is, of course, The teacher is not substituted completely here, but the teacher's role is kind of divided between technology and the teacher. And I thought that it was very exciting. So I was so inspired by her workshop that I reached out to her after the workshop and said, hey, Krista, how about we plan a blended learning environment in my classroom? And Krista was very happy to collaborate with me. So we got together, we planned out the environment. We not just the plan, Krista and I also divided our responsibilities as to who would do what. And it was not just a collaboration on planning, it was a co-teaching model. So it ended up being something that I had to think about, not just about technology, but also about how co-teaching could work for us in the classroom. So we planned a lesson around the water cycle. So we had one center, which was an experiment was set up where students actually could see condensation and evaporation. They could make a hypothesis, collect data, come up with conclusions. Another center had some material on an iPad which students could read, and because it was on an iPad, they could manipulate the font size. We also had material that was contextualized for emergent readers or readers who are struggling to read science content, so we made the language simpler so they could manipulate the size, the content was simpler, and we could do all that because of technology. So that was one center. A third center was a matching and sorting exercise, and finally the fourth center, which was the most exciting one, was called Educreations. And Educreations is an app where the student can create a Khan Academy sort of video themselves, and they can teach back the content that they have learned. So imagine they go through these centers, and the fourth center is Educreations. It was like an assessment where they were teaching the content using technology, both voice. You could add in video, but I think we didn't add in the video. There was voice, and you could actually write on the iPad. And so I could play it back later to see whether students had actually understood the concept. And what I saw was quite magical. Students were engaged. They were taking accountability and ownership for their own learning because they were setting the pace for their learning. There was choice, and there were many avenues through which they could learn. So multiple intelligence, and all of that was coming into play. And I think it's thanks to the collaboration with Krista and thanks to the mentoring program that I was able to do this. And I think it's a gift for all teachers who are part of the mentoring program. So thank you very much.
Well, that's the presentation. As you could tell, our teachers and professional staff, high school, middle school, elementary school, our mentor coordinators, Kathy and Paul, all the work that they've done, and all the work that all teachers have done on this. As I said before, 75% of our teachers either serve as mentors to mentees or have been in the mentoring program at one time over the 7 years. And it has turned out to be a very important program, and it's important to continually note that new teachers and teachers new to the school district continue to receive the support and advice and direction that is necessary to make their initial years in the district as successful and as meaningful as possible. And I think that has happened and will continue to happen. And tonight we have the Mentoring for Quality induction plan for 2017 to 20 on the agenda, and we hope the board approves this plan given the experiences and hard work that everybody has put into this program over the years. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Goldstein, for putting all that together and for managing it. It was a great presentation. I'd like to thank all the teachers who came out tonight. It's wonderful to hear what you're doing and to hear you talk about it with such passion and grace about what you're doing. So thank you for coming tonight, and we really appreciate you sharing what you're doing with us. And with that, I think we'll turn to agenda item H, which is the harassment, intimidation, and bullying report. We need a motion, or is this a good time to talk about voting?
This is a good time about to talk about
Electronic
the
voting.
new process.
Thanks, everyone. Good night. Sure.
So, since the last meeting, I've learned how to do voting in a block. So we can do multiple resolutions in one vote. So how I set it up is I went through and put most of the, all of the regular items that we put on the agenda under a category called action consent. And how, if there's, so at the end, what I'd like to do is go through the agenda where it has a blue note action consent. We'll skip voting on that, but where it has a red action, we'll take votes on those items. At the very end of the agenda before old new business, we'll take one vote on all the consent items. So as we're going through, we can just mention what they are publicly. If anybody wants to speak about them, we could speak about them. And if there's any particular one that's marked as a action consent, just let me know that you want to vote on it separately, and I can adjust it here so that we can take a vote at that time. I tried to hit all the categories that I thought might want to be voted on, but we can change them one way or the other. And then we'll vote on the other items as we go through, and then at the end, we'll just make one vote for all the other items.
Great, so that should speed things along. We talked about
And
this even
electronic.
last year, that we were going to move to a consent agenda on things so that we'd allow more time for things like we've done tonight.
And we
So-
can also do electronic voting, so that'll speed it up as well.
Great.
Mr. Montgomery.
So, Ms. Kennedy, so on item H, so maybe you can just help me along as I go through item H. That's a consent item, correct?
Correct.
So we can move forward to board committee reports.
Board committee reports.
And I would note that even with consent, I happen to have a paper copy because I like it. And we're on page 7 of 36. So,
I don't think anybody has it.
It will move along. But for committee reports, maybe we can try and condense them a little bit if we can. So with that, we'll turn it over to Abby Emerson and Brian Leeds for the student representative report.
Okay, hi everyone. We wanted to look further in depth into the survey results again. And so this time we decided to focus on student schedule. So on page 1, we made a graph of the average PHS student. It's divided by grade, and you can see the different sections as sleep, non-school affiliate activities, homework, school, free time, extracurriculars, transportation, dinner, and just like morning routine. So we wanted to see the exact breakdown of how PHS students are spending their days, just to get more details than the survey provided us with. And we noticed we had some gaps as well. So we did a further survey about that and found that some of the factors accounting for this missing time were community service, music lessons, exercise, waiting for the bus, which we've heard can take up to half an hour after school, and cranberry buses, which is an extra hour.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Okay, so with that, you can flip to the next page, and we have an average PHS student breakdown. So I guess I'll start off with, well, basically this first chart at the top is a representation. It's the data that's being represented in the graph on the other side. And we know definitively that school is going to take 7 hours. And then when we look at the information that we got from the survey, it tells us how much time students spend each night on homework, non-school homework, and sleep. So the rest of the time, we effectively had to extrapolate from the data or give an effective estimate. So with extracurriculars and free time, we took a look at the numbers that were presented by the survey, and we made, they're kind of estimates, but they're based on the values that have been reported back. So we had a high and a low value, and we basically shot down the middle. So we got median values for extracurriculars and free time. And then we estimated about half an hour in the morning, getting out of bed, brushing your teeth, eating your breakfast, and then getting your clothes on, getting ready for school. We said about half an hour for dinner, and then for transportation for a Princeton student back and forth from school, we assumed about half an hour. And then afterwards, when we look down, then we have the cranberry student, and unfortunately, that means an extra half an hour for transportation, which we added in there, bringing up transportation time to approximately an hour. But cranberry's buses actually arrived to school fairly early to avoid traffic. So chances are you can throw another half an hour in there for students waiting, since they get to school at around 7:10, 7:20, something like that.
So next we looked at our student athlete population.
Before I go on, can I just ask a question about the data?
Yes.
Is it possible, because you've averaged all this data, but is it possible to deconstruct the data and have a distribution around these things so
Well,
that,
with
you know,
the survey data, we don't actually have anything other than the averages, so unfortunately we can't do that. But with the next few examples, we're going to look at a couple of specific examples of schedules so that you can see how the timing fits in there.
Okay, thanks.
Right. So next we looked at our student athletes, and we received an estimate that student athletes spend approximately 2.5 hours a day
During their season.
during their seasons. Sometimes it's longer than that. I mean, I had a meet today that lasted 9 hours, I think it was, not including busing. So yeah, that was a lot. Yeah, so then we added this to the averages and the total time at the bottom, so you can see the increase there. And we also took a look at athletics in Cranberry, because that's an extra hour for transportation as opposed to the half hour we assumed for the Princeton athletes. Yeah, you can see that in the a Cranberry athlete who is a junior is closing in on 24 hours at the bottom there, which is 23.54.
And then we've gotten data that 49% of our students engage in athletics, so that's a fairly significant proportion who would have that block of schedule in their day that's dedicated specifically to either training or going to meets or just practice in general. So then on the next page, we started working in clubs as well. So we understand that when we looked at the average PHS student and we took a look at that extracurricular number, we were looking at about 1.4 hours. But first of all, we're not exactly certain how students reported that, if they reported athletics as extracurriculars as well, or if they just reported school-related things as extracurriculars. So we're not certain how that number exactly looks. But now we're beginning to see that if there is a student who does athletics and also participates in clubs, then they could easily add an additional hour onto their day on top of that 2.5 hours that they're using for athletics. They would need another hour for clubs, and that could be doing the tower or model UN, but they do require significant dedication of time. So then when we look at that on someone who's a student athlete and participating in clubs, we're beginning to hit 24 hours, and we're accounting for all the time in the day. And then when we jump down to athletes who do clubs and are from Cranberry, we add an additional half an hour for busing again. And then with 11th grade, we're beginning to see that the time is exceeding 24 hours. So chances are for some of those students, it means that their free time is going to drop significantly. And we could use their free time to account for that.
Or they're really smart and I need to figure out what they're doing to get more than 24 hours.
Yes, exactly.
But I don't understand, Brian and Abby, why, so it seems like, take sleep, for instance. You'd think people who are busier on some things would maybe cut out of sleep or cut out of something else.
That's true, yeah.
But it's 6.31 across the board every time. Is that just the rate,
yeah,
the way that the
we're not
survey is?
accounting for all of that. We're just shooting with the estimates that we have right now.
Okay, so when you take a new sample, whether it's athletes and clubs, they're adding that hour, but they're not showing how they would reduce other activities.
They would probably have sleep reduction, but because we're looking at averages, some of that is lost a little bit, but you're just beginning to see how hectic some of these schedules can get.
And remember, they go to bed on Friday and they get up as late on Saturday as they possibly can, so these are average.
Yeah, right,
They sleep
right.
all day Sunday if they can, but that doesn't all day.
Yeah, I mean, we had some members of the Bell Committee shadow students throughout the school day, and I think we just wanted to provide a little more perspective on what happens after the school day and what else our students are doing with their time.
Mm-hmm. So then, yeah, that last page with athletes and clubs and Cranberries, you really get like the whole range of activities and the full-time dedication, and maybe you're adding in an additional half an hour in the beginning of the school day when they're just waiting for school to start because they're there early, but it does get pretty filled up. And then on a separate note, we also did ask students a bit about gender, and that was because of the results that we got back last time. So how we formatted this was...
Brian, before you start that, I will say that what your study does bring out is a reason that Cranberry parents lobby very hard with coaches to be allowed to bring their children home from athletic events. And some coaches are sympathetic to that, some coaches are not. Some coaches say they came on the bus, they're going back on the bus, but there is a sincere reason why Cranberry parents lobby very hard for those students that are at South to be allowed to be driven to Cranberry. It's very difficult when they're at Heightstown or Allentown to drive right past Cranberry, go to Princeton, and then sit in the traffic to come back. It does save them a very significant amount of time, but it is why Cranberry parents do lobby with coaches from preseason for that avenue.
Okay, so yeah, that's...
Thank you.
I'm very glad that we were able to help you out with that.
Data is important. Yes.
So then, when we moved on, we were asking students about gender, and how we formatted this is we first asked the question, do you believe that there are gender differences at PHS with respect to workload, achievement, stress, etc.? And then we found 46% of students reported no, 34.9% reported yes, and the rest were uncertain. And then immediately following this, we presented the statements that had come out of the Stanford Challenge Success Survey, including that females felt less supported by their teachers, that females reported more homework, more stress. So then we introduced those effectively facts at this point. And then we tried to see how people were explaining them, what they thought could be the causes for some of these differences. Oh, okay. So, yeah, okay. We're actually, you know what, I'll just do the top few bullets first. So we were kind of generalizing these into the types of categories that we were seeing coming up frequently. And one of them was gender stereotypes and the need to prove self-worth. And that seemed to come up for a lot of girls. They felt that they needed to work harder to indicate that they were as good as their male counterparts. We saw that some people explained it with the amount of time and effort put into assignments, and a lot of people felt that girls perhaps put more time and effort. They care a bit more about their schoolwork in certain instances, and this is based on opinion, and we're holding it with a grain of salt. There were personal expectations, and that would effectively connect to the gender stereotypes a little bit and the need to prove self-worth. So some people explained it as perhaps girls were taking harder courses because they felt the need to prove themselves. Then perception and care, which I explained a little bit before. And then honesty was also something that people said, and they explained it as sometimes guys feel the need to seem macho when they're responding to things, so they perhaps underestimate things or they compartmentalize certain things, and then they felt that girls might be more honest with some of their responses on the survey, so they felt that could be just a perception bias effectively. So Abby and I are going to read, I think, 2 or 3 responses that people sent in. The first one is a female student responded, from a young age, females are often, less so nowadays, led away from more academic paths. And this is seen through the types of toys marketed towards each gender, dress-up dolls, etc. for females, construction kits, science experiment kits for boys, which lead to females feeling more inadequate, which lead to more stress, and the need to try harder and spend more time than males on the same assignment.
The next response says, females tend to take things more seriously than males. If they have more time to do a project, they would use all of it, while a male would just use the same amount of time to finish the project regardless. Also, exercise is known to be directly proportional to academic efficiency. Without a doubt, the proportion of males exercising on a regular basis is more than the number of girls. This can be overtly seen in gym classes. When given an option to play kickball or walk, one definitely more rigorous than the other, nearly all the females opt to walk, while nearly every boy chooses to play handball. The reason for this, I am not sure, but perhaps societal stereotypes make it so, and this indirectly affects scholastic stress. And then the next response is, I think just in general, More girls feel pressure to take on more, to prove a little bit that they can do everything well and be successful. It's also sometimes just a parent thing. I've noticed with my friends that parents are usually more lenient on guys than girls and put more chores and expectations of behavior and work on girls than they do to guys. So I think that these responses highlight, they're all true throughout society. I think that, you notice that females make less money, they're less likely to be hired, they hold less high positions such as CEO. And of course, our school is not at fault for the cultural norms pushed on us for years of inequality. But the fact that our school sees significant differences between males and females as compared to other schools shows that something else is going on. And I think we're not talking to our girls enough about what's going on. I think we need to be having sessions where we talk to our girls, and we've talked to Mr. Cochran about this, and we're going to talk to Mrs. Ciso about this, where girls can have a voice for themselves. And I think that there is a lot of pressure. I think that the first thing we talked about was wrong, that guys feel the need to be macho and make it seem not as bad as it really is. But I think that all the other guys in the surveys would do the same thing, so why is our school significantly different? And I think that it's because our females feel like they have less of a voice for some reason. We need to be giving them that voice so they can tell us our concerns more than just data. Like, we need more than that. And I think it's really important that, I think this was the one thing that no one was really expecting out of the survey. Everyone was expecting not a lot of sleep, everyone was expecting a lot of homework, but no one was expecting this huge difference between our girls and boys. And I think that it's something that's really important to me and a lot of other students in the high school. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of, one, that was the surprise that came out, the fact that the stress levels were significantly higher for girls at Princeton High School than for comparable schools that took the same survey. And the importance of student voice is a theme that I think has run through our work and our consideration of this throughout the time that we've been looking at the survey and wellness. So I really appreciate what you said about finding an opportunity for girls to really express what they're feeling and to give them the structures to do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you for your great report, as always. So your next step is to meet with Ms. Ciso, and what do you hope to come out of that?
We're hoping to host sessions where we invite girls, I think from Student Council, MSAN, and then we're trying to pull from a few other places to just encourage girls to talk to each other about the pressures they feel from their teachers, their parents, their classmates, and see what we can find. And I think it's equally important is to host a session with males and see how they feel about the pressures from their teachers, parents, and classmates, and compare their feelings towards the issue. We talked about before how 46% of students felt that there wasn't a gender difference, and it's obvious from the survey data that there was. So I think that a lot of students are just taking this as, oh, and we know it's a societal problem, and I think a lot of students are taking it as that, which is why they don't feel like the gender differences are that much difference in PHS and the rest of the world. But I think that seeing a significant difference is something that really raises a red flag for us, and I think it's something we really need to investigate, which is why we're hoping to encourage dialogue. And I don't think it's something we can figure out with teachers shadowing students, and I think we just really need to be hearing from the students at this point, and I don't think we should be guessing anymore.
Okay, well, I hope you get that set up and you can come back in June and let us know what you heard.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brian and Abby. Next, we'll turn to our other committee reports, starting with facilities, which is chaired by Daphne Kendall.
Facilities did not meet yet in May. We're meeting tomorrow at 1:15 in a closed session. One thing that did come up this month related to facilities is we continue to get results back from our lead testing of all the drinking sources, and we received slightly elevated lead levels in a few drinking sources at JW. These drinking sources have been turned off. And we believe, as with other buildings, that the cause of these slightly elevated lead levels is a result of fixtures which are old and will be replaced, and the water will be retested. This seems to have worked in the other schools where there was a drop. The lead level that we're working with is 15 parts per billion, and we've seen a drop to below 2 from 16 or 17. Just want to remind everyone that students are encouraged to bring in water bottles at JW, especially as it gets warm. We encourage everyone to stay well hydrated. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, now on to finance with Justin Duran.
Yes, the Finance Committee met tonight, May 23rd at
Justin, I'm sorry, if I have a question about the facilities report, do I ask that now or when we vote?
You can ask it now. I think probably now is best.
Okay. So Daphne, the other part of that facilities was that there was also a high lead level in the, out on the athletic fields. There was a high lead level on the outside hose.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I thought we were retesting that.
We did retest. It also came back high.
Oh, it did? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Okay. So we just want to make sure that we follow up on that one and that our coaches are aware, Brian is aware, and that we follow up on that specific one. I know that the coaches are very, very aware about, going into the high school for water. They have to go in there for ice anyway, but we just want to make sure if I don't want to misstep about that being turned off, but we do want to make sure that that specific spigot is one that we have. I know that it's all been taken care of, it's all isolated, but that is one that has been retested and has also failed.
And also on the bottled water, what about the students that are on free or reduced lunches? How are they going to know to bring their own water to school?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, so Mr. Burr has contacted parents, and he has every morning over the loudspeaker is telling kids that they can do that. And it's not just Poland spring water. It's a water.
No, I didn't say Poland.
No, but I'm saying it's not a water bottle. It could be a reusable bottle.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm just saying, unless you're telling them to bring home tap water to school, they want bottled water, correct?
We're
Spring water.
We're putting in the water filter cooler systems in all of the schools, so that the ones that have zero lead and we started at the high school.
Yeah.
The water bottle savers. The students really love those, so we're putting them into all of our buildings. I think Riverside has one already.
Littlebrook and the high school has two.
The high school has a couple, and we're getting those set up for the middle school as well. So students, they just bring in their water bottles. I know some of the schools are actually giving water bottles to students so that they can just carry those with them and get filtered water.
But also just to...
Yeah, I know what they are. I'm just saying, who's going to buy those for the children that can't afford them? Because we're just saying, go to the store, get yourself a bottle, fill it up with spring water, to keep yourself hydrated all day. That's not available to everybody in our community. So that's funny because it was on my mind when I started seeing more and more kids carrying bottled, designer bottled waters to school. But I will see some other ones with no water.
So maybe we heard tonight.
Yeah.
So maybe we're making some more connections.
Right,
But that's a good point.
Okay, I will look into that. And I just wanted to go back to Evelyn's point. Even though our lead levels are slightly elevated over the 15 parts per billion,
some, very few.
The
actually
ones that
found-
have come back. Thank you, Steve. I think it's less than 7. New York, there have been studies that show the main source of lead poisoning is ingestion of lead paint. So while we're concerned, I've been assured that our water source is safe.
Yes.
And so this is, my children drink this water too, and I think we're operating out of an abundance of caution, but I don't think it's unsafe. We're just going to make it safer.
Right. In each of the instances, the water source is fine. In each of the instances, it's really been the older faucet that has been the problem. So once we replace those, we seem to be in good shape.
I don't believe this was water. I believe it was the actual spigot.
Yeah.
That needs to be replaced. So.
Okay, any other questions on facilities before we move on to finance? No. Yeah.
Okay. Finance Committee met tonight at 6:15. Present were Stephanie, Pat, Bill, Connie, Greg, and myself. We discussed May bills. We discussed no excess surplus for the 2016-2017 school year. We discussed potential for referendum, steps in process and timing for Westminster property appraisals and proposals. The next meeting of the Finance Committee will be held Monday, June 12th at 6 p.m. in the Valley Road School Building.
Okay, thanks. And now Connie Witter on personnel.
Okay. The Personnel Committee met twice this month. First, we met on May 8th, okay, and we reviewed the minutes for April 24th, and the minutes were approved. Athletic presentations. Brian Dubinsky presented the accomplishments of our students participating in winter sports teams. Relative matters. The district will continue to accept student-teacher placements from colleges and universities under the agreement tentatively reached by the state with all school districts under the Education Teacher Performance Assessment requirement. The concern was primarily the confidentiality of students' images on videotapes, which is required of the EDTPA program. The committee discussed creating a social worker position at the high school under the new budget, which will focus on student health and equity. The committee also discussed inquiries on salary questions for the volleyball coach and assistant coach and non-salary items related to this sport program. Okay, on May 22nd, the committee reviewed the minutes of May 8th and they were approved. District-wide searches. The Little Brook principal search has been narrowed down to 2 finalists who have been interviewed by the superintendent. An additional step in this process, similar to last year's Riverside Elementary School search, has been added so that staff and parents may meet and give input to the superintendent. A tentative date of June 1st has been set for parents and staff. The committee has recommended 3 finalists to the superintendent for the position of Supervisor of Guidance Services. The superintendent will meet with the 3 finalists and make a recommendation to the board at its June meeting. Review of applications for the Director of Technology position has begun, and interviews will be scheduled in early June. Staffing. The committee discussed various staff searches going on in the district to fill openings for the 2017 and 2018 school year. Staff, okay. The committee will review the breakdown of the district staff ethnicity chart. As of, there's exactly 732 employees, and out of that staff, the staff of color composes of exactly 22% of the district's overall staffing. Job descriptions. The committee modified 2 job descriptions, Supervisors of Guidance Services and Supervisor of Professional Development and Assessments. Summer technology offerings. The committee was informed of courses on essential technology tools, which is part of the district's summer technology offerings. This course will be provided to teachers with training on technology tools that they will be expected to use in the September 20th, 17 school year. Related matters. The committee discussed the need to make sure all students who attend the district schools, including charter schools, are properly domiciled in the district. The committee recommended that every parent complete a residency affidavit prior to the start of the school year, verifying their Princeton address, or in the case of Cranberry students attending the high school, a Cranberry address. The district staff will begin the work of residency verifications over the summer to ensure that all students that are educated in the Princeton district are properly domiciled and living in the district with legitimate Princeton primary home addresses. The committee also discussed confidential matters involving district employees. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Connie. And now for policy, Betsy Bagley.
Actually, it's the alternate.
Oh, you're alternate.
Yeah.
Okay, it's your turn. Okay.
So the policy committee met on May 8th at 1 p.m. in this building. The first issues we discussed with the Princeton High School principal, Gary Snyder, were policy 5600, pupil discipline, PHS, code of conduct, and policy 5500, expectations for student conduct. We discussed that the committee is very concerned about the incidences of bias that we have recently seen in our community and our role in addressing them. We discussed with Principal Snyder that there's a perception among some members of the public that there aren't any consequences when inappropriate behavior occurs. Because individual student discipline is confidential, the district can point to a suggested disciplinary action in the PHS handbook, according to the principal, but not specifically speak about any individual student and the disciplinary action that student may have received. However, in the list of offenses that are subject to automatic disciplinary action, committee members noted that there is currently no automatic consequence for incidences of bias or intolerance. The committee discussed the number of days of suspensions for each violation. Committee members recommended that incidents of bias and intolerance should be disciplined in a manner that reflects the values of our community and the Board of Education. Currently, the behavior that is punished most severely by the district is possession of drugs and alcohol on school grounds, which receives a 4-day suspension. Mr. Snyder said that all suspensions are taken seriously by students because even 1 day of suspension means that students have to check off the "Have you ever been suspended" box on their college application. Mr. Snyder advised that board policy guides the disciplinary actions listed in the PHS handbook. Mr. Snyder, the superintendent, and the members of the policy committee all agree the board should vote on all school handbooks with input from administrators going forward. The committee will review revised drafts of the JW and PHS handbooks at the June 5th policy meeting, and we plan optimistically to put revised handbooks before the full board at the June meeting. Mr. Snyder will work with his staff to recommend changes to the PHS handbook and will return to discuss on June 5th. The next topic that the policy committee discussed with Mr. Snyder was the high school attendance policy, and when doctor's notes are needed, Mr. Snyder said that a note from a parent is always sufficient for an absence to be verified. Doctor's note is helpful in the case of an extended absence. The policy committee will review the related policy 5200 attendance and will update according to suggested regulatory changes as well as edits that would include more practical information regarding attendance at all grade levels. The committee next discussed with Mr. Snyder the responsible use of electronic recording devices. Our policy committee recently revised policy 5516, use of electronic communication recording devices, in 2016, and we focused on making sure that special education students who needed recording devices were allowed and encouraged to use them in class. However, the committee discussed several possible additions to this policy regarding the non-academic limits of electronic recording devices use at Princeton High School. Mr. Snyder shared that while students at the high school use cell phones during the day, PHS faculty are helping students learn how to use these devices responsibly to help them prepare for the future. The committee will return to this topic in June and will discuss a possible addition to the policy prohibiting the use of all electronic recording devices in bathrooms and locker rooms. Regardless of whether or not this language is included in a policy, the committee urged the administration to post signage banning cell phone usage in these areas. A video surveillance policy will be discussed at the June meeting as well. And finally, on the committee discussed mandated changes to two policies with Mr. Goldstein, policy 3160, physical examination, policy 4160, physical examination of support staff. Policies on the agenda tonight for second reading are policy 5330.04, administering an opioid antidote, policy 2622, student assessment, and regulation 2460.16, special education instructional material to blind or print disabled students. The next policy committee meeting is scheduled for June 5th at 1 p.m. in Valley Road. The public is invited to attend.
Okay, thank you, Daphne. And now, student achievement with Betsy Bagley.
Good evening. The Student Achievement Committee met twice this month, on May 5th and May 19th at 11 a.m. here in this room. We approved minutes for our 2 April meetings on May 5th. A number of overnight trips were discussed in student achievement, and they're on the agenda for board approval this evening. A research project proposed by Cecilia Burge from PHS was approved, and the committee has invited Ms. Burge to return to student achievement to share her findings once the study has been completed. I'd like to highlight on both May 5th and May 19th, the committee discussed 2 different drafts of an exit survey that will be distributed to families who choose to leave the Princeton Public Schools. That will be distributed this spring for the first time, and it is our goal to understand why it is that families choose to leave. In an effort to examine our own practice. The surveys will be distributed via email unless parents don't have access to email, in which case paper copies will be distributed. The survey will also be translated into Spanish if that's needed for Spanish-speaking families. We've also discussed a parent satisfaction or school climate survey that we will return to at our June meeting. We have discussed really thinking about why are we doing the survey and what are we hoping to learn from this survey. We are looking to alter the questions by level of school, and we'll discuss more of the main issues around this survey and return to it on June 2nd. But it's the committee is quite interested in doing this work. Similar to the Personnel Committee, the suggestion was made that we also look to verify residency. We've talked about this in student achievement as well. We discussed that at some of our schools, Riverside and CP, there is a letter that goes home every year asking parents to return the form to indicate whether or not their child is coming back to school in the fall. We discussed that perhaps a simple line with the child's current address could be added to that form for a parent to check off as well. And perhaps the other schools will join in collecting that data. Dr. Roche shared that the first preschool parent night was a success, and the parents who attended reported they were quite interested in activities they could do with their children at home, so we applaud those efforts. Dr. Roche presented the 2016 Parcc results to the committee. We all discussed our concern that the achievement gap clearly does exist, and it exists in the data. We discussed new initiatives that our district is engaged in to improve the academic experience of all students. We also discussed the need for increased attention to special education students' experiences with standardized tests, and that we discussed in great detail. Dr. Roche also presented 2 summer enrichment courses for underrepresented populations that will be piloted for the first time this summer. The committee has approved these programs. One is an accelerated chemistry class, and it will be offered to 2 groups of students. Group 1, as I said, students from groups who are underrepresented in some of our higher level science courses, and Group 2, who are students who typically take an accelerated chemistry course over the summer at a private school and choose to pay for that. This has been approved by Student Achievement and will move forward. We're very happy to be meeting the needs of especially our students who are underrepresented in these courses. Also, a middle school program was also approved, similar to this for students from underrepresented groups, pending funding for that program. So we'll return to that in June. We discussed the learning management system and the rollout this year. It was communicated to teachers that content must be moved to the new Power School Learning by September of 2017, and also that next year, this was by our school administrators, all homework, long-term projects will be posted, and long-term projects will be posted on the site. We talked about the need to train not only teachers in this new platform, but students as well. And so the first week of school, Krista Galen spoke with us and said every teacher will review with their classes how to access this portal with their students, and that some students may hear it more than once, especially for those in middle and high school, but that this is really a way to make it more accessible. But parents also need to be trained, so there'll be a letter going out to parents, and we discussed that maybe during back to school night we could share some of this with parents. We've had a number of members of the public come to student achievement meetings. We're very glad about that. One parent shared a concern about Power School, and she shared that it really sends an implicit message about the importance of grades because grades being pushed through on Power School. So we discussed perhaps looking into altering the system so that grades are not immediate and automatic. She also suggested perhaps could qualitative comments be presented to students as well. Mrs. Crisafulli attended SAC to give a special education update, and the committee is very appreciative of her update and looks forward to her coming back to student achievement every few months to let us know what's happening in the area of special education. There's more. Our supervisor of instruction, Baninder Mahabir, attended to give an update on the tutoring survey that was sent out a few months ago. We were very pleased to learn 927 completed responses were received. There was some confusion. Most of these responses were families who did engage in tutoring for their students. There must have been a lot of people who got the survey who could have checked no, that they didn't do any tutoring, but they really didn't submit those. So we wanted to ask this question about what tutoring is happening, as there's a great deal of economic diversity within our community, and we want to ensure equity. A few takeaways, and again, these are all, I'm skimming the surface in the interest of time, but please do feel free to contact me if you'd like more information. Takeaways are that private music instruction was the most common type of tutoring. And also we discussed that more information related to specific classes. We spent a lot of time discussing 8th grade accelerated math, for example. Maybe we look at specific classes and what tutoring is taking place within that. So that could be part of our math review next year. Our communications coordinator, Brenda Sewell, came to discuss the rollout of our new website. The design is being finalized, the site is being developed, and they're spending the summer working very diligently to build this program. And it'll be a new and improved website. We discussed the need for a great calendar that updates, and Brenda was sharing with us that the website will really be based on who you are. That's how you'll access, whether you're a parent or a student or a staff member. Another parent came to express her concern that elementary students have only 25 minutes of recess, as well as the fact that recess is often taken away from students as a punitive measure. We agree with this concern in that, especially, we said we would look into this in student achievement as well as policy, especially when recess is taken away, it's often those students who may need recess the most. We assured this parent we would look into this. In addition, we're interested in whether or not there's consistency in recess times across the schools in our district. Finally, Superintendent Cochran shared new homework guidelines, which will be shared with parent focus groups over the summer and have been shared with administrators. These will be put out next year as a pilot as a way to get feedback and take another step toward meaningful homework and really focusing on our freshman experience with professional development in this area this summer. So, the Student Achievement Committee will meet twice in June, on June 2nd and June 9th. The Bell Schedule Committee will return to us on June 9th to give us an update on that work. We meet at 11 a.m. here in this room. We welcome the public. We're glad so many of you have attended. Mark your calendars. We'll meet twice this summer, Thursday, July 13th at 10 and Friday, August 18th at 10. Thank you.
Betsy, I would just mention one thing in your review of recess. I do know that at the elementary school, that children who play a musical instrument also have to forego recess in order to have that musical instrument practice. And honestly, the recess for children at that age is incredibly important.
Great point. Thank you.
Betsy, thank you so much. There's a lot that went on at that meeting. Just a quick addition to the process for the homework guidelines. So those were developed with administrative input over the course of the past year. They'll be sent out to teachers probably next week in draft form to get feedback from our faculty, and then we'll work with parent focus groups over the summer and then put them out next year. Okay.
Thank you for adding that.
Just a couple of questions. So one, wanted to reiterate that on June 9th, Mr. Snyder's coming to present. And I know there are many parents, either in the room or at home who are interested in that issue. And so June 9th is an important day if you're available to come and hear what the recommendations are. And I believe that will be mainly with respect to schedule, but not exclusively with respect to schedule. With respect to homework, so just wanted to ask Steve, how does that work? What does it mean that it's a pilot? And number one, what does it mean that it's a pilot? And what's the role of parent focus groups over the summer?
So the guidelines that we've developed,
yes,
have specific time frame, purpose of homework, time frames for homework, meaningfulness of homework, all of that is included. There's a role for teachers, for parents, for students with regard to homework. We are looking to put that out and get feedback in draft form from the faculty to see if they have ideas that they want to add to that, revisions they might want to make. We want to have the same kind of conversation with parents. So, for example, even at the Student Achievement Committee meeting, some of the parents they were reviewing it, they had questions about the elementary. So, if it's 10 minutes per grade level and I'm in second grade and I have 20 minutes, is my reading part of that 20 minutes, or is the reading in addition to it? So there was just, in putting the language out there, we wanted to make sure that we're really addressing all the issues. So that's the reason for launching it in pilot form, so that we can then evaluate it after a year and make corrections, additions. So I just think it's a process that makes sense, but we do want to put out for families, for our faculty, specific time frames that are research-based regarding homework, and practices that we think are effective in terms of meaningful feedback regarding homework. So that's the goal.
So is it fair to say it's a pilot in that you're getting feedback and you're trying it out to see how it works, see what
what revisions need to be made.
What revisions need to be made to make sure that the guidelines are clear and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But with respect to how it impacts actual children in our buildings, they will see a meaningful impact in homework?
I think they will. I think that what we talked about as well with the committee was, and it's really based on the research or the survey data that we got from students. One of the other surprises for us, in addition to the gender difference, was the level of homework and the level of stress that our freshmen were experiencing. So that was something very concrete that we felt we could do and begin with. And the teachers of our freshman students have been asked and are willing to come together this summer for 3 days of discussion on this topic, with the goal of looking at the amount of homework and trying to get it from the 3.5 hours that we saw down to something that's closer to an hour and a half, which is what the research would say would be more appropriate for freshmen. So the amount of homework, the meaningfulness of homework, feedback on homework, and questions around grading. So we're bringing teachers together from each of the core content areas, from science, from social studies, from English and math, and they'll be working initially in their own departments to sort of grapple with these questions around homework and how they can make less be more, perhaps. Strategies around getting feedback to students, coming up with meaningful assignments, and then they'll do that for 2 days in the summer, and then the third day they'll be coming together as a group and sharing their strategies. We can issue guidelines all we want in terms of the amount of time, but it's really going to be the teachers who come together and look in a meaningful way at their assignments and make changes that are pedagogically sound, and that's the work we're allowing for this summer.
Okay, so I guess my question then is, I know we're going to do another challenge success survey next year, correct?
Correct.
So we would know in aggregate if homework has come down for
We would.
freshmen or anyone else, but we wouldn't necessarily know. Are we planning to somehow get real-time feedback in terms of measuring how much homework? I mean, I've always suggested that it would be a good idea for just teachers to self-survey their students and just ask how long these assignments took and compile that data.
I think
and have someone collect it.
so. There's multiple ways of doing it. So one could ask students to keep homework journals, and there's variety there. I mean, students they're self-reporting, so there's a level of accuracy that's.
But it's better than
It's better than
nothing.
So the other strategy that we've looked at is actually having some assignments done in class, so that you can actually see how long it takes. And the teacher can get that data. So yeah, we're looking at those, and those things are actually happening now in some classes. But I think there's certainly ways that we can begin to get more of that data.
Okay, well, I'm glad it's a pilot, and I think one of the things that we should be mindful of is we have no way of measuring the efficacy of our pilot except for the challenge success survey, which is a very broad lens to look at how it's working. So, you might want to think about this pilot as you roll it out, specific ways to measure your success of the pilot.
Very good.
So that was one question I had. Second question, was about the survey on tutoring. Would that be appropriate to present at the next public meeting? Or would people like to see those results?
We could. We asked more questions. I think the survey,
Right.
it was a broad survey, and I think it covered a lot of ground. And I think we found ourselves saying, you know what, we'd like to drill down more deeply and ask some more questions. We can talk about that. Whether there are some key takeaways that perhaps we could share, as opposed to going through it line by line.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know. I'd like to see it. Maybe other people would like to see.
Yeah.
You know how
Right.
people are.
No, I
using
think
tutoring.
it's worthwhile, and it really fits with our theme of equity. That was the focus in trying to do that survey, was acknowledging that some people are paying for tutors and coaches, and not everyone can afford that, and we want to make sure that all of our students have equal access.
And one note on that, for example, we discussed in detail how, let's say, one topic, tutoring at grades 3, 4, 5, and 6 might have been 50% of those who responded tutored in that subject, but there was no way to tell if they were the same families or different.
Right.
It could be that from grades 3 through 6, every single parent who answered yes, it could be the same group of people or a different group of people. And so that's why we talked about maybe more specifically looking at classes we've heard there's a lot of tutoring happening in, to actually, drill down on that.
Yeah, I think our family took that survey, and it seems like there may be some structure questions around just, knowing if you should take it twice for two students in your family, or is it just once, or multiple subjects. So you might not have a great data sample, but anyway, it's a good, it's a start. And the other question obviously is to look at, are there whole subject areas where people need to hire tutors to feel successful at that? Okay, I think I had one other question, but maybe we'll leave it for now. Is there anything from the ad hoc committee on alternative revenue?
So we met last week, and so we're identifying some sources where we might get revenue from, and we're meeting again on May 31st, and we're discussing how best to proceed.
Great, thank you. All right, well, a couple things I'd like to say before we close on the committee reports. I guess I'm not going to ask for them to be short anymore, because they never will be. But part of the reason that they're so long is, number one, if you notice, that many of these committees met twice in a month, and so I'd just like to thank this board once again for all the efforts that you do for the children of our community and for the community as a whole, because it's a lot of commitments, a lot of time, and when you ask for a short report and you get a long report, one of the things that it shows is they're doing a lot of work. There are a lot of great issues that are coming up that each committee is working on, and there's also a lot of passion and dedication to what these people are doing. So I'd just like to thank you all for everything that you've done in the past month and that you're doing for our schools. And with that, we go to item J, which is our public forum on agenda items only. If there's anyone who would like to make any comments on items on our agenda tonight, now is the time to do so. And again, when you come to the microphone, Mr. Montgomery, you probably know this, but to just identify yourself and where you live.
Rod Montgomery from William Patterson Court. I'm here more as a curmudgeon than as a taxpayer this evening. Concerning agenda item M3, the STAR Math Adaptive Assessment System. When is this used and on whom? Is there an opportunity to save teacher time by expanding its use? And are there other products from the same vendor, Renaissance, that you're looking at or considering looking at?
I could say that I don't know the answer to the last question in terms of other products that the supervisor might be looking at. We administered it, I think, the end of January for the first time this year at the elementary level, just to sort of gauge where our students were with math and to figure out who may need some support in math instruction. So we are going to be implementing it again next year. It was in pilot form this year, and we'll be looking at it again, administering it again next year at the elementary level.
Okay, I forgot to mention that the thing that particularly grabbed me is that it is an adaptive assessment.
Yes, it is.
Which should, in principle, be more accurate with less stress on the students.
Right. So adaptive meaning that the questions would become harder as the students, if the students are getting them, they get increasingly harder, and if they're not grasping the material, then the questions would move on to something else.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the public on agenda items? Now with that, we move to item K, which is policies, and I believe those are both.
Well,
We have first reads.
First reads are
First reading is
information
just
only.
first reading.
And second read, is that
Second reading is an action. Now, I have it just as an action, but we can make it a consent action. It's up to it's up to the board. I can make it one vote, or we can just vote on it now.
Well, why don't you want to just make it a consent? Is that okay to make it a consent action at the end? Does anyone have any objection to that?
All right, then I'll adjust that now. Okay, so I'm going to adjust that, so that's going to be a consent action.
Okay, any other questions or comments on any of the policy items? I would just to say, I think I said this before, but I'd like to say it again. I thank the policy committee, especially for 5330, the administering an opioid anecdote. I think you guys are going to be seen as lifesavers someday. I'm sorry to say that, but I think you will be. And so I just worry all the time about what we can do more to make sure that we're protecting our children from these terrible drugs.
And just to that end, I think the credit goes to Mickey Crucifelli, who really did all the work on this. I think she found funding. There's training already been done. And so I just want to give her credit.
Good, thank you.
And our nurses.
Yeah. Okay, and moving on then, that'll be a consent vote at the end. And so now we're on item L, personnel. Is that's
Well, because it's such a large agenda, we can switch it, but I just separated, there's 4 items. One is the personnel actions, which is the reappointments. Mr. Goldstein can explain a little further, if necessary. Employee assistance program, I have as an action consent. That's an annual program we have for helping, it's an employee assistance program. Job descriptions, maybe wanted to be separated to vote, and then the mentoring quality. So up to the board's pleasure, which they'd like to be action consent.
well, seeing as aren't these roll call?
Personnel would be.
So why don't we just do
Okay.
L as a roll call vote, right? And we can do L1 through.
No, we can't do it that
Oh, we
way.
got to do L1, 2, and 3. Okay,
Yeah.
so I think we should do it that way since it's.
Okay, yep.
Because then we can consent all the
other ones.
All the ones that are just show of hands, right?
Okay.
Okay, so can we have a motion for item L1? Justin, and a second, Connie. Any discussion on L1? And Lou, if this is right, are there retirees that you'd like to speak about tonight?
We have one retiree on tonight's agenda, I believe Joe Downey, who has been in the district for over 15 years. Mr. Downey came on after the death of his brother in the early 2000s and worked at the high school, the middle school, and the elementary school, working with students in all different types of capacities. And recently, last year, he put on a concert at the Performing Arts Center, which was very well attended. It was a sold house, and it was, I guess, his swan song, if you want to look back at it that way. But it was one of the very, very interesting concerts because a lot of former students came back and a lot of staff helped, and there was a lot of Broadway performers on there. But he has always been interesting. He has been a former mayor, and he has been many things to many people many times. But first of all, he's always had his heart in the right place, and we wish him well in his retirement, and hopefully he'll continue to enjoy the love of music that he's passed on to others.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on L1? And so this is, now we do this electronically, so
Yes.
all in favor
You can-
Well,
or you
or
can
not
vote
in favor,
electronically.
you can
Vote your-
press your
Vote your vote.
vote.
I see the votes coming in.
Just like election night.
It
This
is.
so
This is so exciting.
We won't know till 2
Yeah.
a.m.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's-
Okay, are we okay?
Wait, no, not yet.
Oh,
Okay, I'm going to close the online voting, and the motion is passed. We have a
Carries.
unanimous vote.
okay. And now we're on to L2. We need a motion, please.
Okay, I gotta switch that one.
Okay.
'Cause right now I have it as an action consent.
Oh, because it could be a consent, right?
Yeah.
So you want to just leave it in the consent?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's do
And,
the
and
job description.
L3 job descriptions, that we should vote on, right?
Right.
So can I use, motion, Debbie, you raise your hand, maybe I can recycle that motion. And Connie, a second. Any questions or comments on L3, the job descriptions? Okay. So on.
Well, I guess one
Yeah.
thing, I just want to clarify for the public that the,
Supervisor of Professional Development and Assessment.
yes, is not an additional position, it's a new position.
Correct. It is a new position, but it's not an additional FTE, it's not an additional administrative position. So we have a supervisor of instruction position that we are setting aside. We're abolishing that position and creating this new position, supervisor of professional development and assessment, which is more in line with the district's needs and mission.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think just as a broader, sense that the board has is we respect the administrators and all the great work they do. On the other hand, we are mindful of, in most educational institutions, administration has been the fastest growing headcount. And so we really try to be careful about growing those line items. Hopefully, rejiggering the FTE positions that we have to meet the needs that
And we're
as they
trying to
develop.
use the administrators we have in the most efficient and effective way possible,
That's
which is
right.
why the change.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have L3 as a voting item now on your screen, board members, and so.
Okay, we've got a complete vote, and I have to save it and it will appear.
Okay.
The motion carries.
Great. Okay, so now we move to item M, which is curriculum instruction and,
Excuse me, you have the mentor.
L4, oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Mentoring.
Yes.
No,
and this-
I had that as an action consent, but we can,
No, that's fine.
okay.
That's fine,
Yeah.
we'll leave it as
Okay.
a consent item.
We just need to mention, so.
Okay.
Okay.
And again, with these consent items, is this the time for discussion? If people had discussion on L4 as an example, this would be the time to do it, not at the end when it's consent
Yes.
time. Okay.
Yeah, because we
So-
just want to do the vote at the end.
Right, so any questions or comments on L4 before we move on?
I just want to say, Lou, I was very impressed with the presentation tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for all your work on that, Lou, and again, teachers, many of them have gone home, but thank you for all the teachers for coming tonight. It was really great to hear from them. Okay, so now moving on to agenda item M. How would it work when this is broadly a consent item?
So, yes, because this is under the curriculum and instruction section, so there was nothing specifically out of the ordinary. We can just, report on it.
Okay.
There's a license for SRC Solutions.
So just any questions
Yeah,
or
just
comments
any
on
questions or
anything
comments?
through
under,
five?
and M1 through 5?
And 1 through 5, any
Okay.
questions?
And if there's no questions, then we'll move on to agenda, and maybe we'll do this even faster next time.
The last one is trip, so it's just different, it's not licensed.
Right. But it's
Yeah.
still-
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we go through agenda items N, which are also consent, correct? So
I have
any,
a question on N.
Okay.
Are these similar costs to 2016, 2017? The three of them.
Well, the first one is 16, 17.
Oh, sorry.
The second one is 17, 18. I didn't notice anything drastically. There's a long laundry list of them.
Right, no, I know.
Yeah.
I just didn't
That, I'm sorry, I don't know that answer. That comes out of student services. So I don't know that answer. I didn't do any comparison. We just took the information.
Right.
You know, just not familiar with all of it, and I was just curious.
Well, I would say
It's just-
generally speaking, Debbie, these are, a lot of these special, special education allocations are for specific student situations where cost really isn't one of the considerations that we can lawfully consider when we make them. So it's really done for the benefit of the child, and the cost sort of is what it is. That might not be true for everything on this list, but I know generally speaking, we don't do a lot of, if someone, as an example, would need to go to Eden Autism charges what they charge. And those costs do tend to go up when we look at, back to finance, when we look at special education, it is very hard to control those costs because of our statutory and moral obligations, really.
Right, I was just curious though, now if a student leaves and we've, say the student graduated and we approved this, we wouldn't.
Oh, we don't pay. It's, these are,
These are consulting services.
consulting services.
Okay.
And some of them are more than likely going to be used, and some may not. So, and then if you look at and I'm looking at the list now, so I can speak a little bit more intelligently about it. So if you look at the per evaluation price, they're not drastically different from prior year. They might be a few dollars off.
And it
But
always has a
it's-
not to exceed amount.
It has a not to
So-
exceed, and then if it exceeds or gets close to that, we do a new board approval for anticipated going over the amount.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on agenda items N? Then we'll move on to, sorry, we were on N, correct? So now
Yep.
we're on O.
O has half action and then half not action. Not
Okay.
action consent, I'm sorry. Half is action consent, and then we started our regular monthly finance reports. We have a co-op purchase of the fire security wall. We have a donation from Robert Wood Johnson for some Cisco equipment, networking equipment that the tech department's going to use actually for surplus parts. Fire evacuation drills we have monthly, and travel and related expenses. All of that items 1 through 5 or current year finance activities.
Okay.
Then we start at 6, which is an action item, the food service management company for 17-18. So that's an action
That's
item
a-
separate.
Because that's a contract. we have
Yeah,
to
do you want me to
provide.
go through the rest of the action consents and then go back to the votes?
Sure.
Sure, okay. School pricing, school breakfast, lunch pricing,
Is that the same as this year?
they are. The same exact pricing, the price,
Okay.
yeah, the pricing did not go up. The next, I have to announce, thank you to Mr. Montgomery. We had the Cranberry tuition contract I now have noted is tabled because although I had the information right, it somehow was not got, the attachment is a combination of new dates and old dollars. So we'll present it back again in June. Thank you, Mr. Montgomery, for catching that. Error on my part, sorry about that. Next thing is professional service for our auditors. I can't see. Okay, our facilities use annual term agreements, they're for rental income on our part from the Ys, the YM and the YW, and the adult school who rent our facilities, and we receive revenue from them. The rest are all action items in this category.
Right,
So we go back to
11.
11.
That's for the architects for the trailers?
Yes. Do you want to do them, but speak
No, I
about the
didn't
net or
ask
where?
on that. So we hire architects to figure out where to put trailers?
So the, multiple things, yes. The answer to that is yes.
Yes.
Also because you just can't, it's not just you roll the trailer in and you park it. There's foundations, there's
Plumbing.
plumbing and, well, maybe, if we have enough money.
Yeah.
There's Yeah, well, yeah, thank you. There's, electric. There's approval from the state. There's specifications that have to be created. So it's not just, pulling an RV up, which would be really nice.
There's egress issues and fire
There's
safety
egress
issues,
and
all those things.
Fire alarm, it has to be alarmed, it has to be, yeah.
And is this specifically for the high school, or it's just kind of?
At this point, it's for the high school unless we, yeah. That's what they-
Can I ask a question about O10, about the facility use?
Yes.
I know this may be a student achievement question, but the YW and the YM, they each run programs at 2 of our schools.
Correct.
Have we ever done a review of those or asked for any parent input? I know, I'm just sort of wondering, do we ever look at that for the aftercare program?
Not recently.
No, not since I've been here. We
Okay.
haven't.
Okay.
That could happen.
Maybe it's something we
big.
can
Yeah.
discuss.
Okay. And also on item O, I'd just like to thank Robert Wood Johnson. They come up from time to time, along with other not-for-profits, and we talk sometimes about the not-for-profits that don't help us as much as they should, but we also have lots of not-for-profits who help us a lot, and so just wanted to recognize them and all the great not-for-profits who do things for the Princeton Public Schools. But so now I'm a little, so maybe you can just help us through this, Stephanie. How would we vote for the action items? Can we do it all at once?
No.
Or is it each one?
Each of the action
Yeah.
items, we have to vote separately,
Okay,
so.
so that's starting
We
with
start with 06.
06.
And then we have to take a first and a second, and then
Okay,
vote.
so let's start with 06. We have a motion, Justin, and a second, Debbie. Any additional questions, discussions on 06? And now, is this going to be an electronic vote? And so,
Wait, I want to ask a question.
Oh, go ahead.
With the food management company, so when there are balances in accounts, so student counts, students have overdrawn, whose problem is that? Is that the district's problem, or is that the food management company's?
Problem in the sense of?
So I go to buy lunch, I don't have money, and I'm negative $350.
Right.
Ultimately, who's responsible for that $350? I'm trying to
The
find out.
parent is responsible.
Right, but I'm saying, let's say the parent,
Okay,
yeah.
So ultimately, the food service, it's the food program is responsible for it, is the one that gets hurt by it. Because the food management company is just managing the program. So they're not, if a meal's not paid for, it comes out of the operating funds of the program. So let's just say
Which
were
is
in a district.
the school district.
Right. Yes, but it's an enterprise fund, so it's separate from our general fund.
But it's our money, it's not.
It is.
service
It's the program is the school's is the district's program. So it's really the district that. So when an enterprise fund has to maintain itself, so food service has to maintain it, has to get enough money to support itself. So at the end, if there were, it's not the case here, but say we were another district that we had more outstanding debt than we did, covering our costs, that would be a detriment to multiple things. By regulation, we're not allowed to have a negative in our food service account. So it's got to either break even or like a operating fund can't help fund the foods program. So what we do when we do get any money back, we reinvest into the program, which is the appropriate thing to do. Well, in my opinion, you would buy new dishwashers, new, whatevers that hard pots and pans, because all of that is funded through the program. The food service doesn't buy the knives and forks and whatever ware. The program pays for it all. Does that make sense? Sort of. Okay.
Okay, so we had a motion and a second, so now here it is, the vote.
This is so exciting. Mr. Montgomery, you'd love this. Okay.
Okay, so now,
Wait. Motion carries. Okay.
okay, now we're on to 07.
07's action consent, that was the prices, because that didn't change. So now the next action is professional services for the,
And the 11.
for the trailer,
Yeah.
trailers.
Okay, so this is 011. I need a motion. Justin, and second. Greg? Okay.
Sorry, I can put my glasses on. Take vote. Open. Vote away.
Yeah, any other questions, comments? Okay. And what's the next one then?
Wait, we're not done voting
I'm
yet.
sorry.
Coming in. It's like the old days when we used to have to wait upstairs for the election results to come in from each district. Voting district, I mean. Okay, closing. Saving. Motion passes. Okay, next is extraordinary unspecifiable services, which is the health benefit broker. That's what they call it.
Wow.
So-
It's quite a name.
Extraordinary unspecifiable service, also known as an EUS.
And I mentioned in finance, I just mentioned to the whole board, we looked at moving health insurance brokers about, it was during the time of the PREA contract, and we thought it was a good idea to leave our health broker intact at that time because of all the changes. But something we might want to look at in the future, just reminding people that we did an RFP about 2.5 years ago, and it's probably time to look at it again so we can ratify it tonight. But, I think it's just good practice to turn over those service providers, and so maybe we should look at that in the future. But this doesn't preclude us doing that at any point we decide to do that. Okay, so we need a motion.
Right.
Yeah, Connie, and a second. Justin? Okay, and any other questions or discussions on item 012? Okay, and what's the next one after?
Still waiting.
Oh, sorry, still waiting. Remember the old days when we just raised our hands? This is
It's faster.
This is so much
It's
faster.
fast.
We were on the ball.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, motion passes.
All right.
Okay. Medical insurance coverage. I can do a little quick talk about that if you
Okay.
like.
Well, I guess we need a motion and a second first, right? So motion, Betsy, and a second, Debbie. Okay, any discussion?
Okay, so just to let you know what occurred for the whole board, share this with finance. I did an RFP with the help of the broker, who we just approved, for medical health insurance, which is our largest expense for medical. So we had to do an RFP, and before that, I had to go to the state comptroller's office to have them review the RFP that was going to be issued on the street. I had to work through, it was quite involved, it took quite a few weeks. When it was all said and done, then the RFP went out to medical brokers, medical carriers. In the end, our results were actually very good. Our recommendation is to stay with Aetna, who is our present carrier, at a zero cost. Mr. Corral? Zero rate increase on, anyway, the health benefit insurance rates will stay flat for the next year. What this RFP does is allows us, we're not required to bid it again for another 3 years. So we'd still negotiate rates for the next following years, but we don't have to go out for another formal RFP.
But it's a big win to have
It is.
a zero cost increase.
Yes.
We
Yes,
have,
it is.
in the recent past, we've seen up to 10% increases compounded annually. So that's a big, and I think that we budgeted some
We did budget
increase.
an increase, yes.
So that's terrific that we've
Yeah,
that we've been able to do
and
that.
what I also explained to, when we've finished the budget, I didn't have the results of the RFP in, but I did cut back, as you remember,
Mhm.
on the.
From 6.5% to 4%.
Yeah, or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what it was. But what we also didn't do, as when we approved additional staffing, we didn't increase the medical line. So some of that savings will be
Yeah.
used up by the others. But in
Right.
the end, we're not overinflating.
But a 4%, it was about a $10 million expense, so 4% expected was 400,000, which is now coming at zero, so that's fantastic. Yeah. Okay, and then your voting came up, I think, right?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, what's next? Is it,
Wait, motion passes. Okay. Next is, this is the actual, all of the coverages for the year. So we have the, let me open it up here.
Wow, the dental went down 3%.
Dental went down 3%. The prescription drug, real quick, we're in a self-funded plan, so that the increase, which I'm not exactly sure that's the right increase, it'll be that or less, is just on the rates. It does not really drive the premium because we pay actual costs. We have been paying over $2 million, so I know we'll pay more than, at least $2 million in RX. Not likely to go anywhere towards 3.75, but I just put that in just as an end catch. And then our I plan, which is offered to Parcc staff as a minimal cost. So overall, our health benefit cost renewal for this year, 17-18, has come in very good.
that's great. Okay, so we didn't do a motion on
We did not do a
14. No,
motion.
so a motion on 014. Justin, second Bill. And
Here it comes. Motion passes. And lastly, we have
015. So
Right.
015.
have a motion and a second for 015. Craig and Bill?
Do you want discussion?
I
Or
think
do you-
maybe
we
just,
okay. Mhm.
well,
There you go.
either way.
What?
Yeah, I think just, I mean, if you can just give an overview
Okay.
of what that is.
So, what this is that Ryder has put a public RFP out for people that are interested in the program there and the property. Their priority is that they would like to have the college purchased along with the property and the program to run there. That's their primary choice. Then secondary would be somebody would take the colleges. This is all their information. What we're doing is just getting in the process, in the queue, is if the property becomes available, that we would possibly be a contender in,
Right, so does this bind us in any way?
This does
to-
not bind us
okay.
to anything. This does not, this is just keeping us in the process and getting our foot over there in the door.
So can I ask you a question?
Yes.
And with, we heard earlier from the Westminster Conservatory, and so this is not the time in the process where we would talk about, they had asked if they would like to stay in Princeton and rent land. This is not the time to talk about it?
Not to us, no.
Not to us. If we were to move forward, would there be a time in the future?
I can't answer
We can't answer that? Okay.
Yeah, I would imagine that in the future, if this does go forward, we've sort of, it's going to get complicated, but there's maybe a time for them to at least have their voice heard and see if we can figure something out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so you should see a vote on 015.
Motion carries.
Okay,
Now we move on to all of transportation is consent.
okay. Any questions on transportation? Item P, and we don't need a motion for that.
No,
Right.
real quick, item 1 and 2 are, item 1 is current year.
Right.
Item 2, 3, and 4 are future,
Okay.
next year, which was 5
Okay.
minutes away.
And so now there's item Q, which is a consent, so we need one motion for item Q, which covers all the other motions. So Greg, and a second, Justin.
Okay, we got Greg, and Justin. And then take the vote, and online voting, and this will vote everything up above it.
Okay.
So that's why this would be important if there was something along the way that somebody wanted to vote separately.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
good, makes sense.
Yeah, now you understand my question, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. And then I'm gonna cross my fingers that when I get to go to the meeting, that this is, I mean, the minutes, that this will
Yeah.
yeah.
work.
It'll all flow through. Okay, so now we're on
This
to
change will affect all consent orders, okay.
item R. All set, Stephanie?
I am
Okay, so
good.
item R, any old business or new business? Hearing none, then we have item S, our last public comment session for anyone who's still awake and wants to come up to the microphone and make a comment about any topic. Dr. Corral.
Hi, Bob Krell, science teacher at the high school. Just a quick clarification on two things, Stephanie. So the insurance rates for the individual employees will also be the same if they're on the same plan.
That's correct.
That's what I wanted to make sure I was hearing. Okay.
That's what I was trying to say to you.
No,
Yes.
it doesn't affect me personally because I don't take the insurance here, but
Right.
it does affect a lot of people
Yeah, it
I
does affect a
represent.
lot of people, yeah.
And they'll be glad to hear that. Thank
That's a
you.
big one,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
exciting. Yeah.
Well, unless their criteria changes, if they go.
If they don't change their status.
Right, or they don't jump to a different level of.
Right.
Yeah, so there's, yeah, nothing, yeah.
The rate that's being charged to the district is not changing.
Correct.
And therefore, whatever the applicable rate to the individual does not change.
Correct.
Okay.
On medical.
On medical.
Yeah. It will.
This does not include dental or prescription?
The part that we just spoke about does not. But
Okay.
the fact that the dental went down and the RX is going to go up a little bit, it'll probably still be around almost exactly the same rates.
Okay,
We haven't
great.
totally figured it out yet.
Thank you. I just want to make a quick comment about the student survey. The fact is that we only do the survey once during the year, and it's a snapshot. I have a freshman homeroom who I have surveyed a couple of times since the survey, and especially on the homework point, and my students have made a point to me that their amount of homework has not gone down, but the amount of time that they spend on the homework has gone down because, and to quote one of my students, they've become they've adapted to time management, that they came in without good time management skills, and that one of the things they had to learn was to do time management. And they would say easily an hour off of the total amount of time they spend in homework, according to just my homeroom. Small sample of 24 kids, freshmen. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I think measuring is so important, just to get that data. So you say, okay, this used to be an hour-long assignment, but now I know by May, this is a 30-minute assignment. Like, if you don't have that data, how do you know? And you've got a data sample of 20 kids there, which is great, but it would be really good for the whole enterprise to be collecting.
But that's maybe something we can survey more frequently in homeroom and break down. The Stanford survey was a very involved survey. That's not a 20-minute survey, okay?
Right.
But maybe we can do some subparts of that, specifically related to homework, through homeroom at a couple of points during the
It's a
year.
good idea, yeah.
Okay, I don't know if the data will mean anything, but, like you say, it's self-reported data, so you take it with a grain of salt.
Take it with a grain of salt, sure, but what gets measured gets managed. And if you're not measuring it, how do you manage it?
And I think also the students will become more aware if we measure more frequently,
Yeah.
they'll be more aware of how much time they're spending. I would like to see questions about, okay, does this include time texting your friends or checking your Instagram account? That might be a factor in how long they spend.
Right.
If you have that sampling, you can see just like a bell curve, and then you can see, okay, well, who maybe needs help with their homework. I mean, it'd be invaluable. So, yes, we need to get on this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments from the public? Mr. Montgomery?
Rod Montgomery from William Patterson Court, still in curmudgeon mode. As always, my comments are in what the positive psychology enthusiasts term active destructive, and they originate from a position of hopeful pessimism. Thank you to Mrs. Kennedy for the searchable PDFs in the agenda. Great improvement. I'm glad to see you all using the consent agenda. That's a big improvement in your efficiency. Bravo to Dr. Corral for the summer chemistry initiative. I hope y'all will carefully examine the results of that and consider using that as a pattern for possible initiatives in other subject areas. And I'm going to pick on the student representatives and surveying a little bit here. I will be watching the the survey result report. I heard Mr. Lee say that averages are not available. Only averages are available, not distributions. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The average has to have been computed from something. In general, statisticians are very skeptical about averages unless they have looked at the distribution to make sure that the average is an appropriate measure of the center. You did refer to median at some point, which is generally more appropriate. But I think you ought to look at distributions, and if there's something in your process that's keeping you from having access to distributions, you need to reconsider your process. Let's see. For one thing, averages get pulled around by extreme values. A couple of 24-hour students will blow the whole average. I was very glad to see the surveyors refining the survey based on previous survey results. That's the way to zero in on operational definitions of what really are you asking. So that's a good one. I will be watching the student representatives' turnover process, particularly for its effect on the surveying work. Is there a documented process, or will the new student representatives have to relearn everything from scratch? Is there an archive of lessons learned about the methods that you're using? What questions worked well? And what questions produced more confusion than insight? If you don't pass that on as an archive, your successors will have to relearn all those lessons again. On the tutoring survey, at the Student Achievement Committee, I heard, and maybe I misheard, that the survey that was done was a one-time heroic effort by one individual and really can't be replicated with any reasonable amount of effort. My question then is, can students take this over, make it a recurring survey with a documented process that can be continuously improved. Just one more thing. There was a mention, and I don't remember the exact context, of students keeping diaries of where their time is going. This is one of the recommendations for personal effectiveness that Peter Drucker makes in one of my favorite books on personal effectiveness, The Effective Executive, Know Where Your Time Goes. You don't have to keep a diary every day, but every month make a diary for a day or 2 or 3, just so you know where your time is going, and then you can think about, okay, what should I stop doing so that I have time to devote to something else. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for your hard work on behalf of Princeton students.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. Any other questions or comments from the audience? If there are none, then we need a motion to adjourn. Greg?
Okay.
And Betsy? Sorry? Is
Yep.
that it? All in favor? Is this an electronic vote we need to do? All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Greg.
Great. So we are adjourned.
I'm going to mark you all as unanimous.
Okay. Yeah, right.
Hi.
I'm playing
Oh.
Oh, yeah, we wondered where Phil was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not something we exactly.